It all kicks off on a bustling, brightly lit street, totally packed with people soaking up the festive night vibes. The mood is pure joy, with laughs echoing around the holiday decorations. Just then a family strolls by. The parents ask if their daughter had fun and she hypes it up, saying it was the best day ever. They keep walking together, just enjoying the moment. The little girl, totally amazed, points out how huge something nearby is. Meanwhile, the MC is walking the opposite way, super frustrated that he always has to shrink himself to make room for everyone else. Walking through the crowd, he realizes he seems to be the only lonely guy on that entire street. With that thought in his head, he heads toward the entrance of an underground station. But suddenly he stops dead in his tracks. Something totally grabs his attention. Looking to the side, he notices there's someone else completely alone in that place. It's a guy dressed as Santa, huddled on the ground next to a sign. The sign asks people to tell their wishes to the jolly old man, something the MC would usually just ignore and walk right past. But today is Christmas Eve, the exact day his parents passed away in an accident and left him all alone in the world. Moved by the whole situation, he pulls his wallet out of his pocket, ready to help. Holding a few bills, our guy offers the money to the man, telling him to take it and insisting it's from the heart. He then drops the cash into the donation box. But out of nowhere, Santa grabs his hand with a crazy tight grip, praising his kindness. The guy in the suit drops to his knees, saying he wants to return the favor and asking to hear the young man's wish. Freaked out by the bizarre vibe, the MC thinks the dude is out of his mind and tells him to let go of his hand. He tries to break free any way he can, pulling with all his might. Except the old-timer has a ridiculous grip, claiming he came to grant the wish of a kind soul, leaving our guy shook that he can't move even 1 inch. The mysterious man almost seems to glow as he begs, revealing he can't return to Santa's village without hearing a wish first. Seeing no way out, the young guy asks if he'll really let go if he tells him a wish, which the old man eagerly confirms. So he starts brainstorming what to ask for. Not taking it seriously, he asks to win the lottery, but the man gets furious, demanding a wish that comes straight from the bottom of his heart. Getting the memo, the guy decides to be real with himself. All he really needs is a family couple who won't abandon him and will stay by his side forever. With that in mind, he asks for a wife who looks like a bunny and a daughter as cute as a mongoose. Satisfied, Santa feels the absolute sincerity in the request, realizing the young man has spent a long time living in pure isolation. The old man celebrates his luck in finding a soul so similar to his own. With a super creepy grin, he guarantees he's going to find him a pure-hearted wife and a beautiful daughter who respects her dad. Right after, he wishes the guy a happy life and finally lets go of his hand. The MC speedwalks away, calling the guy a nutjob, while Santa yells that he's going to use all his power to make that dream come true. The bizarre man keeps screaming that everyone in the village is rooting for him, leaving the young guy convinced that this dude has completely lost his marbles. A little while later, the subway rolls into the station. Already inside the train car, the guy holds on so he doesn't fall over. Sitting there, he tries to process what on earth that crazy Santa was rambling about. Even with how weird the whole thing was, he admits his wish was 100% genuine. Looking at an ad showing a happy family, he concludes that the only thing he really wants is to be happy. Exhausted, he closes his eyes to catch some rest during the ride. Suddenly, he wakes up feeling freezing cold and noticing a weird smell in the Super disoriented, he gets up holding his head. When he fully opens his eyes and looks around, he gets the jump scare of his life. He realizes he's being hauled in a rickety wooden cart down a dirt road. Locked inside a cage, shirtless, he tries to wrap his head around where he ended up. Next to him, he spots a bearded guy looking totally defeated. He also notices another blonde prisoner leaning against the bars. Checking out the surroundings full of people in the same awful spot, he thinks this looks way too much like the Middle Ages. Then he turns his head in a panic when he hears noises outside. Gripping the wooden bars, he realizes he can't understand a single word the guards are saying. Everything there screams medieval movie set, with a bizarre language and people looking completely different from what he's used to. He's totally confused if this is a dream or reality knocking at his door. He finally gets a reality check and figures out he just got ice-skied to another world. The shock is so massive he collapses on the cart floor, panting and freezing his butt off. Trying to pull himself together, he checks out one of the guys tossed in the corner of the cell and wonders if he's gone for good. When he gets closer to check and apologize for bothering him, he realizes the worst really did happen. He turns his back on the body, deciding to focus entirely on his own survival. Lying on the cart floor, Santa's words about using all his power echo in his mind. Completely devastated, he questions if this was the so-called promised happiness, and if he spent his whole life misunderstanding the word. Desperate, he mentally begs to wake up if this is a nightmare, having already lost track of how many days have passed. The cart just keeps rolling non-stop through unknown landscapes. During his time locked up, he ended up figuring out a few things, first being that everyone there, including him, are prisoners destined for forced labor. The second clue comes from watching the guards constantly surrounding them. It becomes painfully obvious, the only reason they're being dragged around is to be sold off. At one of the stops, the cell lock is smashed open. The soldiers line up the captives, while a local leader picks out only the ones in good physical shape. As much as it crushed his pride to accept this degrading setup, he started feeling a tiny spark of hope. Getting out of that hellish cart would be his only ticket to escape, and since he was built pretty well, he figured he'd get bought super fast. So he stood tall, confident this would be his out. But all that hope gets completely squashed after they pass through several villages, and nobody even looks his way. With every village they leave behind, his frustration just skyrockets. And the torturous travel routine kicks right back up on the dirt road. After taking a beating from the guards, he gets thrown violently against the wooden floor, wondering how things went so wrong. Laid out on the floor, Juin remembers past advice about living life to the fullest, but right now he just wonders if there's any point in sticking around like this. Flashing back to his childhood, Juin hears a voice from the past asking if he finally learned his lesson. Tossed on the cart floor, he mentally calls out to his parents, questioning if he can actually survive this nightmare. Then the memory of that creepy Santa pops back into his head, promising to use all his power to make his wish come true. Annoyed by the irony, the guy reaches for a fork on the floor, telling that so-called happiness to go straight to heck along with both worlds. He grips the object tight, feeling that the only thing that matters right now has absolutely nothing to do with the wish he made. With a sudden move, he gets up and leans on the bars, convinced that true happiness would be just passing on to a better place and escaping this misery. But his face quickly changes as he realizes this dark thought isn't what he actually wants. The blurry image of his old, precious family pops into his memory, making him realize he doesn't want his story to end in a dump like this. Overcome by exhaustion and sadness, he just stays quiet, accepting his harsh reality. Suddenly, a hand slips through the bars offering a piece of bread. When he looks up, he sees a super kind woman gladly handing him the food. Right behind her, little Lizzie peeks curiously through the bars, catching our guy's attention. The little girl steps closer, holding the wooden bars and staring at him with pure innocence. Totally paralyzed by the sight of these two kind souls, the MC lets the fork slip from his hand, dropping it on the cell floor. Far away from there, the story shifts to a small, isolated wooden cabin deep in the woods. Inside the house, the woman and Lizzie are sitting at the table, sharing a simple meal in a super chill vibe. The little girl tips her bowl, drinking every last drop like she means it. Taking advantage of the moment, the woman slides her own plate toward the girl, asking her to eat a bit more. Holding her tummy, the kid stares at the food, definitely still hungry. Her adoptive mom explains she's giving up her share exactly so the little one can eat better. But Lizzie turns it down, saying if the woman is hungry too, they should share the feeling. Blown away by the little girl's maturity and sweetness, the woman is speechless for a second. Then she agrees with the kid, reinforcing that it's just the two of them against the world now. The peaceful moment is wrecked by loud banging on the door, followed by the village elder calling for her. Startled, the woman hugs the kid, while the guy outside announces the council decided to marry her off to one of the newly arrived prisoners. Shell-shocked by the news, she listens to the elder order her to pack up and head into the mountains with her new husband the very next day. Before dipping, he tells her to bring food at dawn to welcome the men at the village entrance, leaving the woman clutching the girl in sheer panic. Collapsed on the dark cabin floor, she completely loses it, never imagining they'd make this call so fast, scared out of her wits about going back to an abusive life. Shaking, she holds the little girl tight, knowing running away from this place isn't even an option. Looking at the kid's peaceful face, she curses the situation but knows she could never leave the child behind. Just the thought of leaving the girl alone in the world again is something she absolutely refuses to accept. In her mind, memories of the kid's heartbreaking crying bubble up. The little girl used to cry her eyes out, her face soaked in tears and her heart totally shattered. Back then, the kid spent all her time weeping on the cabin floor, feeling the heavy weight of her loss. Watching from a distance, the woman used to wonder what her own fate would be from then on. Huddled in the corner of the wall, she begs herself not to have to live through that nightmare all over again. Looking for some comfort, she shifts her gaze to the bed where the girl is resting. Seeing the kid hugging a teddy bear, she figures the trauma must be just as huge for the little one as it is for her. Lizzie is just a 5-year-old orphan without even a real name, left behind by the guy who passed away. Flashing back to her own tragic past, the woman remembers the day her dad sold her for a single rabbit pelt. Her arrival at that exact same isolated cabin in the woods marked the start of absolute heck on earth. Before she could even unpack her bags, she got thrown to the floor by the guy who was supposed to be her husband. From that second on, the beatings became her daily routine, crushing whatever hope she had left for a new life. Left on the wooden floor, feeling the fallout of her partner's cruel actions, her reality was just pure misery. But right in the middle of all that darkness, a tiny blonde figure shyly appeared from the corner of the room. All bruised up and too weak to fight back, she just laid there on the freezing floor. Then the little girl walked toward her, bringing the only shred of light in that miserable dump. The kid dropped to the floor right next to her, keeping her company in her most painful moment. That little angel-faced kid was the only person in the world who had the guts and empathy to get close. A little while later, the guy went off into the mountains and never showed his face again, leaving the two of them alone in the cabin. The villagers said he met a tragic end in the hunting grounds and would never come back. Getting the news of his passing brought massive relief, but also sparked some serious anxiety about the future. Without a protector in the village, she knew her situation was far from safe. Around there, a woman living solo was an easy target for literally anyone's bad intentions. Snapping back to the present, the sun starts to rise as the two walk toward the village entrance. Hyped by the commotion, the girl tugs at her adoptive mom's clothes and points ahead. The little girl announces that a huge cart just rolled up to the spot. The transport vehicle stops, revealing the prisoners locked up in the back under the woman's watchful eye. Following the council's orders, she steps up slowly, carrying the demanded basket of food. Inside the cell, the MC looks up, totally surprised to see someone approaching. When he locks eyes with the two of them, Juwon's eyes go wide in absolute shock. Suddenly, a dark memory of brutal beatings and cruel words takes over the scene. A violent dude was complaining about the dramatic act the two were putting on, acting like a total jerk. This scary figure towered over the woman and child, claiming their attitude completely ruined his appetite. Taken over by panic as she relives her own trauma, the woman's eyes well up with tears. Seeing the sheer terror written all over her face, the MC changes his expression, feeling real empathy for the pain they carry. Trying to push past the fear, she stretches out a shaky hand and offers the bread through the bars. The two just stand there outside, hoping he'll take the small meal. The simple food is handed over with a gesture packed with kindness and hesitation. Totally broken by that show of affection, he lets go of his anger and drops the fork, amazed by these two. The silent connection gets cut off when the village elder walks up, asking if the new arrivals are already there. The old man announces the leaders are taking over the welcome party, and orders her to hand over the basket and head straight back to the villagian order she takes with her head down. Unable to argue, she calls the little girl and they turn their backs on the cart. Right before walking away completely, the kid takes one last look over her shoulder at the guy. Gripping the bread tight in his hands, the MC watches them leave, feeling like his destiny just shifted forever. With the bread in hand, Juwon finally takes a bite, enjoying that tiny bit of relief. Then the guards smash the cell gate open, making a ton of noise and yelling in their weird language. With zero gentleness, the MC is yanked out by force and tossed onto the dirt floor. From the impact, the piece of bread slips from his hand and rolls into the dirt, totally ruining his meal. Right after, he gets hauled off with the rest of the prisoners to a clearing in the woods where the soldiers group them up. Juwon gets a massive jump scare when one of the guards pulls a knife out of nowhere. But the soldier just uses the blade to cut the ropes tying the captive's hands. Next, the guards activate some glowing papers, leaving our guy shook when he realizes it's some kind of magic. Without understanding a single thing, he wonders what kind of crazy world he just dropped into. A soldier finally walks up to the MC to cut his ties. Juwon stays quiet while the guy slices the ropes that held him for so long. After finishing the job, the guard just stares at him in silence for a split second. Free from the ropes, the guy turns his attention to a small village hidden deep in the trees. Far away from there, right outside that rustic cabin, a sack of supplies gets dropped on the ground. The village elder tells the woman the village will provide food for a bit, since her new husband doesn't speak the local language. The older guy emphasizes that her ex was universally hated by the village, and the new guy should be way different. The elder mentions the soldiers reported the prisoner is probably just a commoner. Listening quietly next to Lizzie, she hears the guy supposedly has very delicate hands. Holding the little girl's hand, the woman feels a wave of relief knowing his hands don't sound like those of an abuser. She tries to chill out, thinking that if he just focuses on working in the mountains, they can all live in peace. Taking a deep breath, her only wish is that he isn't a violent monster like the last one. Watching the little one sleeping, she crosses her fingers that the guy will just let them live their quiet lives in peace. Suddenly, loud banging on the door shatters the silence, followed by someone yelling to open up. Struck by instant panic, the woman hugs the girl protectively. The door flies open with a bang, revealing the group standing outside. The village elder announces loud and clear that he brought the man she's going to marry. On high alert, she listens as the old man orders the newbie to step inside the house. Juwon walks through the door with heavy steps, looking completely wiped out. Clinging to the kid on the floor, she goes into shock recognizing the guy, wondering why they brought someone looking so defeated. While the MC tries to process where he is, the woman can't believe this is going to be her husband. Checking the guy out, the woman shrinks back even more, super intimidated by how tall he is. Juin looks down and spots her huddled on the floor. The guy instantly recognizes her as the kind person who gave him food back at the cart. He notices the state she's in, totally clueless as to why she's shaking with terror like that. Out of nowhere, the elder shoves the MC from behind while running his mouth in that undecipherable language. Thrown off balance by the push, Juin takes a step forward, making the woman shrink back in fear. The guy turns around confused at the village men, trying to figure out what they want. Without missing a beat, the elder steps up and grabs the young guy's arm tight. Moving fast, the old man grabs the woman's hand and slaps it together with the MC's, forcing them to stand close. The old guy steps back laughing, joking that now they actually look like a real couple. Holding her hand in a wildly awkward vibe, the guy feels the heavy awkwardness of the bizarre situation. Then the memory of that creepy Santa hits him like a truck, promising a pure wife and a daughter who respected him. He stares at the woman in front of him, realizing her face actually does look a whole lot like a bunny. Next, he looks at little Lizzie and notices the crazy resemblance the kid has to a mongoose. Utterly mind-blown, the guy gets a reality check and realizes that crazy dude in the suit actually kept his promise. Seeing the two of them scared to death of him, Juin thinks the old-timer really didn't need to ice-sky him to another world for this. The flashbacks of his time in prison flood back, making him question why he had to suffer so much before his wish came true. Anger starts taking over as he drops his head with a super dark expression. Fueled by rage, the MC promises himself he's going to put a stop to that crazy Santa if they ever cross paths again. But his intimidating stance just scares the woman and child even more, and they start to tremble. Sometime later outside, Juin is walking through the forest tagged by one of the village guys. The MC feels super frustrated that he can't decode a single word the dude is saying. The villager casually walks up and holds his hand out toward the MC. Confused by the random move, the young guy wonders if it's supposed to be a handshake. Deciding to play along, he reaches out and grabs the local's hand. With a jerky motion, the guy squeezes Juin's hand with ridiculous force. Totally unfazed, the guy suspects that crushing someone's hand must be some weird local greeting around here. The villager flexes hard, trying to squeeze even tighter, obviously trying to intimidate the new guy. Having zero patience for this, the MC just squeezes back way harder, instantly breaking the guy's tough act. The dude drops to his knees screaming in pain, while Juin lets go with a look of pure boredom. Once he recovers, the guy gets up pissed off and shoves a basic bow into the MC's hands. Holding the weapon, Juin is confused by the handoff, but figures the guy isn't trying to fight anymore. The local starts making exaggerated arm gestures, poorly acting out someone hunting. Watching the performance, the young guy finally gets that the whole point here is to teach him how to hunt a rabbit. He adjusts his grip on the bow, accepting he's gonna have to learn how to bring home the bacon. Hyped up, the man points aggressively at a specific spot in the bushes. The villager directs the newbie's attention to the target he just spotted. Right nearby, a little white rabbit is just chilling in the middle of the greenery. Juin gets ready to shoot, but mentally admits he's never held a bow in his entire life. Taking a knee, he pulls the string back, remembering that hitting a target is actually super hard and wondering how he's gonna pull it off. Locked in, he draws the arrow back firmly, while some mysterious energy starts glowing around the projectile. He lets the string fly, but the arrow misses by a mile and slams hard into the dirt. The villager points his finger and busts out laughing at the terrible shot, making the guy feel super awkward. Juin just looks away, face totally red, super annoyed by the dude mocking him. Far away from that mess out in the woods, the woman is walking with Lizzie through the village carrying a simple basket. Surprised by the sudden approach, Juin turns his head back. He just stares at them without saying a single word, soaking in the fact that they're right there. Watching the woman walking with little Lizzie holding a basket, the guy reflects that this is his actual wife. With his heart racing, he can't look away, feeling the weight of this brand new reality. In the background, the villager who got his hand absolutely crushed runs away in a hurry, leaving the two of them completely clueless about what just went down. Soon after, they lay out a cloth on the forest floor in complete silence. Sitting together in that clearing, the moment turns into a neat little impromptu picnic. Out of nowhere, a bowl of hot stew gets handed to the MC. While he eats quietly, the woman and the little girl scarf down their food right next to him like they haven't eaten in days. Suddenly, Juin stops eating and quickly turns his head toward them, instantly spooking the both of them. But he just keeps staring at the scene, processing everything super calmly. Unable to hold back his feelings, he finally shows a warm and genuine vibe toward his new family. In his mind, the word family always felt completely alien, from his school days all the way to his 30 years of life. Watching the two of them eating together, he feels like a family was finally handed to a guy like him. Holding the bowl, he figures it would have been better if this had happened naturally. But after all the nightmare he went through, the order of events doesn't even matter anymore. Looking up at the sky, the guy sighs, admitting he wants to deck that Santa for what he went through, but at the same time he actually feels grateful. Breaking the campsite silence, he says aloud thank you to the mysterious old man. The next day things start moving at a crazy fast pace, with them climbing up a mountain trail. Carrying a ton of luggage on his back, the guy notices they are struggling and wonders if they can keep up the pace. Walking right behind him, the woman and little Lizzie are panting from exhaustion, almost out of gas to keep climbing. Super frustrated with the language barrier, Juin hates that he can't even ask if his new wife is doing okay. Determined to change things, he knows he needs to adapt to this new world ASAP. Then his footsteps stop dead right in the middle of the dirt road. An old memory crashes into his mind, recalling the advice that when you have someone to protect, you can't hesitate. The voice from the past said that the exact second he felt the urge to protect, he should act immediately. Snapping back to reality, the MC turns around and stares at them in silence. Walking toward them, he approaches ready to fix this problem. Seeing the huge guy getting closer, the little girl backs up, letting out a sound of pure fear. Juin crouches down near them, giving a heads up that he's going to hold them for a sec and asking them not to freak out. But since she doesn't understand a single word, the woman goes into total shock, paralyzed with terror as he steps up. The guy reaches out his hands talking in his own language, which basically sounds like scary alien gibberish to them. Clinging to her mom, the little girl lets out a panic scream, thinking the absolute worst is about to happen. Seeing the two of them huddled in pure terror just from him getting close, he figures he shouldn't even wear a serious face around them. Super calmly, he asks for permission as he leans in toward his family. In one swift move, he grabs little Lizzie by the waist, lifting the kid right off the ground. Right after, he pulls the woman toward him, completely catching her off guard with the move. Juin adjusts his stance, perfectly holding his wife and stepdaughter in his arms. Now standing, he carries all the luggage on his back along with the two of them, not even breaking a sweat. The little one is totally confused, not getting why she's being carried like this. The woman, meanwhile, looks over his shoulder, mind blown seeing the ground zooming away so fast. Kicking off the march, the guy just tells them to hold on tight. Sprinting up the mountain, he's shocked by how light they are, thinking they weigh almost nothing even with all the bags. Locked in, Juin promises himself he's going to learn the language and how to hunt fast so he can feed them loads of meat. Staring at the road ahead, he acknowledges he's got a ton of work to do from here on out. Realizing he just wanted to help with the climb, the woman finally relaxes and rests her head on his chest. Hitting their destination, Juin tightens his grip on the luggage strap and finally stops running. Super carefully, he sets the woman back on her feet, making sure she's steady. Led by an older villager, they finish the trail deep in the woods. Standing in front of a busted-up cabin that's basically falling apart, the MC thanks the guy for showing the way. The guide turns around and bails, leaving the guy checking out his new crib. Staring at the totally wrecked wooden house, he comments that this is where they're living, betting it'll be way colder than his old rooftop room. Imagining how bad winter will suck, he cringes in frustration, remembering how much he hates freezing. Not wasting any time, the young guy pushes the heavy wooden door to check out the inside. The second he lays eyes on the dark room, he lets out a huge gasp of surprise. Rushing past him, the woman enters the cabin absolutely terrified of the state of the place. The guy is totally lost on why she's panicking and asks why she's crying. Ignoring his question, the woman bolts to the back of the room. Juin turns his head, trying to see what got her so rattled. Standing in the middle of a room lit only by the doorway, he looks around completely confused. Analyzing the empty space, he realizes that while she was at the village, somebody robbed them blind, taking everything from the shelves and table down to the most basic tools. Lying on his back on the dirt outside, he realizes that without tools he can't fix the house, and worst of all, he can't protect them if a wild beast shows up. Walking through the grass, the woman finds him chilling outside. The second she gets close and sits on the grass, the guy stands up and faces her. In a super sweet gesture, he reaches out and rests his hand on his wife's head. He softly strokes her hair while the woman holds back tears, keeping her head down. Looking right at her, Juin tells her not to stress, making his partner wonder if he's actually trying to calm her down. With her face soaked in tears, she looks at this gentle giant, fully aware this is the man she has to live with from now on. In her head, she weighs the struggles, knowing they don't speak the same language and he has no clue how to hunt. Overwhelmed by uncertainty, the woman seriously doubts they'll be able to survive together in such a harsh, unforgiving place. But the MC's calm and welcoming vibe gives off an unexplainable sense of peace. Keeping his gentle touch, he promises he's going to protect her from everything, completely shattering all that anxiety tearing at her heart. Bathed in sunlight, the two stay connected by that simple, comforting gesture. Hit hard by his words, she feels a massive weight lift off her shoulders once she notices his calming tone. Sitting on the forest floor, the gap between the two of them seems to have finally closed. Shedding a few tears, she wonders why she suddenly feels so at ease next to this guy. Kneeling in front of his wife, Juin recalls that in his original world he lived totally solo since his parents passed. Holding her hand firmly, the guy reflects that despite everything, he always fought hard and stood his ground to survive. Super affectionately, he pulls the woman into a warm hug, feeling that now that he has a family, there's absolutely no reason to give up. Thumping his own chest with confidence, the MC guarantees she doesn't need to worry because he'll do whatever it takes to provide for them. Sitting on the grass, the woman wipes her tears and finally starts to calm down, seeing her husband's absolute determination. Suddenly, a loud growl comes from the guy's stomach, completely killing the emotional vibe and surprising them both. Right then, little Lizzie comes running like crazy from the woods, screaming in her weird language. The little girl throws herself in front of her mom, spreading her arms like a shield and begging him not to hurt them. Watching the kid trying to protect her mom, Juin just sits there processing the brave move. Looking at his wife, he thinks about how wild it is having a woman cry in his arms with such raw honesty. Then he looks back at the sobbing little girl, admitting to himself that this whole family dynamic is completely new to him. A ton of questions flood his mind about where this kid came from, and why this woman offered him bread back in prison. With a soft touch, he wipes the tears off her face, trying to sort out all these messy thoughts. Juin realizes that if they keep living together and putting in the effort, they can definitely build a solid family. In a protective move, he hugs them both at once, promising to become a great husband and dad so they never have to cry again. Embracing his new family near the lake, the guy promises himself they'll never regret being by his side. As the afternoon fades, the sun starts setting, lighting up the old wooden cabin where they're all gonna live. Already inside, the three of them sit on the rustic floor, keeping a bit of distance in a slightly awkward vibe. Juin crosses his legs, frustrated, realizing the intimate mood completely vanished and they're back to square one. Watching the two of them looking so alert, he's glad the panic has at least passed, but he's totally clueless on how to break the ice. Suddenly, the MC raises a finger, getting a simple idea on how they can start communicating. Sliding across the wooden floor quickly, he scoots a bit closer to his wife and stepdaughter. Pointing at his own chest with a friendly look, he says his full name out loud. The guy repeats the pronunciation super slowly, aware they at least need to know what to call each other while living under the same roof. The woman catches on fast and murmurs his name carefully, making the young guy pretty happy. Taking advantage of the vibe, he points at his partner, asking what her name is. A bit confused by the request, she just touches her own chest, not really knowing how to answer. Then the woman shifts her hand, pointing at the little girl and saying the kid's name out loud. Juin nods, praising the name choice while pointing at the kid, all hyped up. Next, he points back at his wife, insisting on finding out her name, which makes her super nervous. His partner shakes her head no, backing up to show she has no idea how to answer that question about her own name. Noticing the sad look on the little blonde girl's face, Juin finally realizes the kid hasn't even been given a real name yet. The guy stays quiet for a second, feeling a sting in his chest, realizing the situation this orphan is. Super gently, he touches the girl's forehead and tells her he's going to pick out a really pretty name for her. In a super sweet tone, the MC decides to name the little girl Dorothy. In his mind, the classic fairy tale character pops up, one who travels through a magical world making a bunch of ride-or-die friends. Wishing the best for the kid, he figures with that name she'll grow up adorable and find her own happiness. The little one murmurs the word, struggling a bit, while Juin crosses his fingers that she'll be surrounded by people who love her in the future. Flashing a huge smile, the little girl says her new name perfectly, accepting the gift completely overjoyed. The next day, the MC wakes up on the grind and starts chopping firewood right outside the cabin. Hiding behind a tree, the woman watches her husband hacking at the wood, thinking the guy acts super weird. While he completely obliterates the log in one swing, she thinks about how even though he's way bigger than her aggressive ex, he's treated her with nothing but pure kindness so far. Hugging the tree trunk, the partner feels a wave of relief that this young guy is absolutely nothing like the cruel people from her past. Remembering how softly he introduced himself, she realizes that even without understanding the language, his voice sounds really refined and friendly. Dark memories of her old abuser come bubbling up, making the woman realize she had never been treated with so much care in her entire life. The young guy wipes the sweat off his face with a friendly vibe, leaving his wife totally confused as to why he's giving out so much free kindness. From the bushes, she checks out how built the guy is, absolutely certain that a dude like him does not belong in this isolated spot. Spotting the woman nearby, Juin waves enthusiastically, calling her. Looking closely at her husband, the partner zeroes in on his features and remembers something huge. An old rumor from the kingdom pops into her head about an enemy nation that managed to summon a great warrior for the war. The legend said this legendary hero had incredibly dark hair and eyes. Slowly, the MC casually walks toward her hiding spot through the tall grass. Staring at his face, she starts thinking his features match the legend a little too well. But the wife quickly tosses the crazy idea, knowing someone that important would be chilling in a palace, not in a busted cabin on a mountain. Taking a step back, she convinces herself that those summoning stories are just made-up peasant folklore. The guy finally stops in front of her, leaning down to keep direct eye contact. Up close, the woman notices her husband's hair and eyes are actually brown, not purely black. Feeling a sudden wave of relief, she's thankful he's just a regular guy who's a bit taller than average. With her hand on her chest, the young woman wonders why she got so worried about it when they barely even know each other. A little embarrassed by her own thoughts, she quickly turns her head away, leaving the young guy totally clueless about what just happened. Ignoring her weird reaction, Juin just reaches out and rests his hand on his wife's head in a super affectionate move. That random act of affection leaves the woman completely stunned, since she's never experienced anything like it. Feeling his touch, she remembers that in the past, the only reason a man ever raised a hand at her was to hit her. But the guy just strokes her hair with an impressive gentleness. Closing her eyes super slowly, the partner soaks in that cozy feeling, hoping it never ends. Totally lost in the moment, the young woman secretly hopes her husband keeps petting her head forever. The vibe between them starts heating up, and the MC's face turns slightly red from embarrassment. Staring at the guy with hard eyes, the woman lets herself get completely swept up by the romantic forest atmosphere. Their bodies naturally move closer, erasing any gap left between them. With their faces just inches apart, the two get ready for an incredibly emotional kiss. Suddenly, Juin's eyes shoot wide open as he realizes what he's about to do. A massive reality check hits the woman, and she freezes like an ice statue from the absolute cringe of it all. Totally embarrassed by his own impulse, the young guy quickly backs off, scratching his face trying to play it cool. To escape the incredibly awkward situation, he instantly turns his back and focuses on his work, acting like nothing ever happened. Gripping the handle of the wooden bucket for dear life, the MC changes the subject, focusing on finishing his mountain chores. To run away from the embarrassment, he bolts off with the bucket in hand, leaving his wife standing there. The woman is left completely stunned, face bright red and heart pounding after that unexpected moment. Sprinting down the forest trail, Juin curses himself for being an idiot, wondering what the heck she must be thinking of him right now. Frustrated, he facepalms, remembering that even though they are married, they literally just met today. The guy realizes they can't even communicate properly and wonders if he should just pretend it didn't happen. Suddenly, his footsteps stop dead in the middle of the path. Looking at the dark woods around him, the MC wonders just how far he ran and where he ended up. The forest vibe gets thicker and creepier, with the wind howling through the trees. Wasting no time, he decides to grab the water ASAP and head straight back to the cabin. Just then, a sudden noise gives the young guy a massive jump scare. Stepping out of the shadows, a giant wolf with glowing red eyes appears, staring our guy down. The beast steps closer, baring its fangs and giving off a seriously deadly vibe. Juin freezes in terror while the animal snarls loudly right in his face. Staring at this massive monster, he can barely believe that thing is just a regular wolf. In shock, the guy backs up and ends up dropping to his knees, totally defenseless against the creature. With a quick reflex, he reaches out and grabs a thick branch off the dirt. The beast lunges with everything it's got, forcing the MC to use the chunk of wood to block. The animal bites down on the stick with ridiculous strength, its jaws inches from the guy's face. Desperate, Juin screams, putting everything he has into holding the monster back. But the wood snaps from the pressure, leaving the young guy completely wide open. Unable to defend himself, he gets violently tackled by the wolf, cursing the situation as he gets pinned to the ground. Fighting for his life, the guy declares there is no way he's accepting his end in a place like this. Fueled by pure willpower, he lands a full power punch right in the creature's face. But the monster brutally retaliates, causing the young guy massive pain. Juin roars in agony, feeling like his entire body just caught on fire. Suddenly, a weird light flashes and startles the creature. Intense flames explode right in the middle of the chaos, instantly knocking the beast back. The magical fire shoots straight from the MC's arm, lighting up the whole area. Hit by the extreme heat, the wolf backs off scared and lets the guy go. The creature stumbles away, seriously messed up by the fire blast. The fire completely consumes the wolf, handing the guy the win in the blink of an eye. The monster collapses defeated on the ground, lifeless and completely scorched. Laid out on the grass panting, the MC tries to process what just went down, remembering seeing his own arm catch fire. He checks his arm closely, thinking it's wild that there aren't any burn marks on his clothes. Still in shock, the young guy figures out he actually just used magic. Then he remembers all those fiction stories where people get ice-guyed and get crazy superpowers. The guy remarks that this is a super standard cliché in light novels. Staring hard at his own hand, he starts accepting that this is his new reality. Hyped up, he points at the sky and screams the name of a fireball spell. When absolutely nothing happens, Juin spams the command hoping to trigger the power again. Lying in the grass, he tries yelling out other op magic spells, getting desperate. The guy keeps testing out catchphrases and summons next to the down wolf, but still gets nothing. With a totally bored face, he gets up and confirms it wasn't a hallucination, since his battle wounds are basically fully healed already. Stoked by the discovery, he realizes that if he masters this power, he can provide for his new family by hunting monsters. The MC smiles, picturing a future where he can give his wife and little Dorothy a cozy house and a ton of food. With that in mind, he also notes that magic is gonna be a game changer for healing them, since there are 0 doctors in that isolated village. Standing up, the guy takes a deep breath and decides to take things one step at a time. A sad memory hits him, recalling how his grandpa took him in after his parents died, only to pass away shortly after in a random accident. Back then, his toxic relatives dumped all the blame for the tragedy right on the kid's shoulders. One of the family members bullied him hard, claiming that having him around brought bad luck to the family. Just a middle schooler at the time, Juin had to sit there and listen to them call him the cause of all their problems. Remembering being treated like a curse leaves a bitter taste, but he quickly brushes off those thoughts about the past. Snapping back to the present, the young guy grabs the giant wolf and decides to skin the animal later, worried he might attract more beasts. Lugging the heavy carcass on his back, he starts the trek back home. The guy jokes to himself that watching his grandpa clean chickens back in the day is finally gonna have some real-world use. Walking under the moonlight, he drops a slight smile, figuring the old man would be pretty proud seeing him like this. Despite getting the W, the MC is still clueless on how he's gonna train this newly unlocked magic. Far away from there, the vibe inside the old cabin is super cozy with the fireplace lit. The woman and little Dorothy are making dinner together, neatly organizing the wooden dishes. With a sweet smile, the wife thanks the little girl for helping out. In a cute move, she pets the girl's blonde hair, and the kid responds with pure hype. The child runs happily around the room, bringing a little life into that forgotten place. Playing near the wall, the little girl peeks through the crack in the wooden door. Suddenly, the kid spots something super sketchy out in the dark. Terrified, Dorothy lets out an ear-piercing scream when she sees the head of a giant monster pop up at the door. Panic takes over the woman the second she hears the kid screaming her lungs out. Operating purely on mom instincts, the wife grabs a knife off the table to defend her daughter. She sprints toward the entrance, telling the little girl to get away from the danger. But when she gets a better look at the threat, the woman realizes something that leaves her completely dumbfounded. Out of breath, Juin shows up at the door carrying the massive down beast, having 0 clue why everyone is screaming. Still in the dark, the wife screams in a panic, totally convinced her husband is getting mauled by the wolf. Spooked by their reaction, the guy drops the heavy carcass on the floor instantly. Trying to chill the situation out, he calls out the woman's and the kid's names, letting them know it's just him. The partner freezes with the knife in hand, finally processing that the monster is already lifeless and being carried. With a massive wave of relief hitting her chest, she drops the weapon in the grass, losing all her strength after the jump scare. Leaning heavily on Juin's arms, the wife cries a river while getting a solid hug from her husband. Dorothy watches the scene up close, touching the MC's jacket with shaky hands. Juin sweetly admits he just took a little bite on the arm and that he's totally fine. Sitting on the forest floor next to the big defeated wolf, the guy tries to calm his family down. The wife hugs him even tighter against his chest, showing massive relief that he's safe and sound. Rubbing his partner's back, the MC repeats that he's okay and asks her to stop crying. Dorothy snuggles up close to them, whispering that she was also scared out of her mind. Walking back home together under the moonlight, Juin carries the beast's carcass while comforting his family. Flying freely through the night sky, a crow watches the whole thing from way up high. Arriving at the cabin, Juin quickly sets up an improvised workbench outside to start dealing with the animal. Gripping a sharp knife, he starts the job of prepping the meat super carefully. Stopping for a sec to catch his breath, the guy complains that his grandpa's butcher job looked way easier than it actually is. Wiping his sweaty forehead, Juin decides that next time he'll try a different method to speed things up. Taking a deep breath and locking in, he decides to give it his all to finish the chore fast. Looking out the cabin window, the wife watches her husband grinding away outside. Surprised not to see the kid around, Juin calls out Dorothy's name. Keeping up with the young guy, the wife walks out quickly holding a wooden bucket. Pointing at the container, she asks her husband to store the meat in there. While the woman gestures happily trying to help, the MC wonders if that's really what she meant. Scratching his chin, Juin tries to remember what the right word for thank you was in that weird language. Stuttering a bit, the guy finally manages to drop a slightly awkward thank you. The wife's eyes go wide, completely surprised that her husband tried to speak her language. Not getting her reaction, the young guy wonders if he just accidentally said something dumb. Pointing at herself with a sweet smile, the woman repeats the word for thank you. The MC watches his partner step a bit closer while saying the word. Looking down at their feet in the grass, the vibe between them gets really cozy. Smiling warmly, the wife says thanks again, looking right into his eyes. Juin flashes a huge smile, replying that it's no problem at all. Thinking to himself, the guy realizes he'd never even heard a thank you from his own parents or siblings. With his heart melting, he realizes that next to this person, he's experiencing a lot of things for the very first time. With her face bright red, the wife feels her heart racing as she thinks about that near kiss. Doing a 180, she sprints back to the cabin, trying her best to hide her embarrassment. Thinking to herself, the young woman admits this is her first time going through this and wonders if he's done the same with other girls. Feeling a squeeze in her chest, she confesses her heart is beating so fast it almost makes her want to cry. With his back to her, Juin keeps organizing the containers near the wooden table. Helping out with the chores, the wife thinks it's super weird that she's the one taking the initiative to get close like that. The young guy suddenly turns around holding a bowl, making his partner wonder why he's acting so casually. The two just stare at each other for a second in total silence. Mentally panicking, she thinks he's gonna make a move and almost loses her mind from the nerves. Squeezing her eyes shut tight, the young woman waits paralyzed for what's coming. Their faces slowly get closer in the middle of all that tension. Their lips meet in a quick, unexpected peck. Startled by her own bold move, she backs up blushing, cursing the guy for closing his eyes. Juin just stands there holding the bucket, not really knowing how to react to his wife's sudden outburst. Alone and holding her head, she goes into full panic mode, thinking she gave off desperate vibes for a kiss. Surprised, Juin turns his head and stares at his wife right up close. Determined not to mess up again, she opens her eyes wide to avoid any misunderstandings. The two share a passionate kiss again, leaving the young woman absolutely stunned. Pulling away slowly, the couple shares a super shy look. Suddenly hearing a noise, Juin turns around carrying a bucket and calls out Dorothy's name. Peeking from behind the door, little Dorothy goes into shock realizing she just saw them kissing. Dying of embarrassment from the whole thing, the wife bolts back inside the cabin. Walking down the forest trail, the little family heads toward the stream. The trio walks together through the trees in total harmony. Carrying the bucket, Juin smiles when he gets a sweet thank you from the little girl. Stopping the walk, little Dorothy tugs at his pant leg, looking upset about something. Confused by the kid's reaction, the guy tries to guess what's wrong and assumes he messed up by not calling her by her name earlier. Crouching down sweetly, Juin thanks the little girl directly. With a huge smile on her face, Dorothy cheers happily while helping to carry the container. Inside the cabin, the wife handles prepping the wolf pelt, while Juin thinks about how strong the animal smells in there. Juin's eyes go wide when he gets a genius idea on how to maximize their resources. He figures that wolf pelt will be a super precious and valuable item for Dorothy. The wife and the little girl check out the dark fur laid out on the cabin floor. Curious, little Dorothy touches the animal's paw, super hyped. Smiling happily, the little girl celebrates the new thing next to her mom. Watching them from a distance, Juin notices they seem to be having a blast. The outside shot of the rustic cabin shows a chill day on the mountain. The wife's skilled hands carefully prep the cuts of meat into the containers. Juin watches closely, thinking he needs to learn how to do that by himself next time. The woman smiles, totally satisfied with the result, glad she saved the fat to use later. Deep in thought, the guy realizes he still has a ton of important stuff to learn in this world. He thinks about how money, trading, and the value of things actually work around there. Ready to change his life, Juin gets up from the floor, saying he needs to get back to work. Getting jump-scared by his sudden move, the wife quickly turns to look at her husband. Asking if she'd rather he just stay seated, the guy calmly walks over to his partner. Promising he won't overdo it with work, Juin shakes his head, telling his wife not to stress. Right after, he taps his own shoulder, claiming he's rested enough and doesn't feel any pain anymore. As the husband walks off with the tools, the woman watches him leave in silence. Already deep in the woods, the guy checks out the trees around him and figures their size is perfect for some chopping practice. Gripping the axe tight, he admits he doesn't know the difference between types of firewood, but he fully trusts his own brute strength. Wasting no time, the MC winds up and delivers a massive strike against the trunk. The sharp blade hits the tree with everything he's got, biting deep into the wood. From the impact, the giant tree immediately starts toppling over in the forest. Caught off guard by how fast it fell, Juin scrambles back so he doesn't get flattened by the trunk. Far from there, the old cabin stays chill under the daylight. Pushing the wooden door open, the guy finally comes back home hauling a totally packed basket on his back. The second he walks in, the wife and little Dorothy turn right around to greet him. Completely wiped, the young guy drops the heavy load on the floor, relieved to be done with the chore. He plops down on the ground with zero energy left while the woman rushes over. Holding her husband's roughed-up hands, she looks worried, but he quickly tries to chill her out, saying everything is fine. Taking in his wife's care, Juin whispers a thank you while Dorothy pops up in the background. The little girl runs happily through the cabin carrying something in her hands. Stopping near a basin, she carefully wets a cloth in the fresh water. Right after, the kid comes sprinting back toward the couple. Handing the wet cloth to the MC, the kid's adorable move leaves him completely surprised. A bit confused by the random act, the guy lets out a sound, not really getting it. Right then, the wife touches his shoulder, proudly pointing out her daughter's good deed. The little girl just stands there in front of him, anxiously waiting for a reaction. With his heart melting, Juin pets Dorothy's head and thanks her for the help. Seeing the woman running around non-stop trying to organize things, he desperately begs her to take a break. Sitting there soaking up that family moment, the young guy admits this all feels like a dream. Flashing a massive smile next to his wife, he says that just a few days ago, he could never have imagined experiencing this much happiness. Outside, night starts falling over the isolated forest. Smoke drifts up from the chimney, proving it's nice and toasty inside the house. Gathered around a tiny wooden table, the three share dinner in a vibe of pure peace. During the meal, the couple enjoys the simple food in total chill mode. Exhausted from a crazy busy day, Dorothy ends up crashing right there at the table. The wife quickly spots the scene and points at the sleeping kid with a gentle smile. Super carefully, the guy scoops the kid up in his arms so she doesn't wake up. While he stands up holding the little one, the woman also gets ready to clean up the mess. Walking silently through the cabin, Juin carries the girl toward the bed. He tucks Dorothy into the blankets as gently as possible to make sure she rests well. Through the window, the pitch-black forest completely contrasts with the soft light inside the house. Focused on her chores, the wife starts washing the dinner dishes near the window. Right then, the MC sneaks up behind her, wanting to pitch in with the task. In a sudden move, he grabs his partner's hand super softly. Totally caught off guard by the touch, she turns her head, cheeks burning bright red. The young guy just stares at her in silence, giving off a vibe of pure comfort. The two stand super close, wrapped up in a romantic atmosphere under the moonlight. Giving in to the moment, Juin pulls his wife into a warm hug. Taking the lead, the guy starts unbuttoning his own shirt. Dying of embarrassment, the woman tries to convince herself not to be shy, since this is exactly how a wife is supposed to act. Next, Juin finishes taking off the shirt, showing off his built physique. He just stands there in front of her, waiting while his partner hesitates, looking nervous. Noticing the young woman's tension, he drops a comforting smile to calm her down. But the embarrassment fully takes over and she shrinks down, fighting her own nerves. Without forcing a thing, the MC just holds her hands with pure tenderness. Pulling his wife close, he keeps her wrapped up in a safe, chill hug. Breaking the silence, he shatters all the expectations and just suggests they go to sleep. Outside, the night breeze rustles the trees around the quiet cabin. Lying side by side on the hard wooden floor, the woman stays totally stiff next to him. The young guy quickly pulls the heavy blanket over them to block the midnight cold. Getting comfortable on the makeshift bed, the wife watches her husband settle in to sleep. Feeling a massive wave of relief because of how respectful he's being, she flashes a genuine, blushing smile. With his eyes closed, Juin finally gives in to exhaustion and falls into a deep sleep. Snuggled up against her husband's chest, the young woman feels the soft warmth of the hug as she drifts off. On the other side, little Dorothy is also sleeping super peacefully in her bed. In the guy's thoughts, a memory of that mysterious Santa pops up, while he mentally begs that this happiness is never taken away from him and that they both live a long life. In the wife's memories, she thinks about how rich nobles could never understand a lack of space, since they live surrounded by servants and massive rooms. The reality for poor families was always way different, with all the kids growing up in the exact same space as the parents. Because of that, she recalls that kids end up finding out way too early how couples spend their nights. A dark memory from her childhood creeps back, bringing up her dad's terrifying voice threatening to beat her if she cried, something that always haunted her. Hiding under the covers when she was little, she spent her nights listening to her mom's muffled crying after her husband's brutality. That traumatic routine forced the woman to live with constant fear locked inside her. Watching her sleeping husband, she admits she was always terrified that her mom's painful crying would become her own future. With those thoughts, the young woman closes her eyes, feeling a peace she's literally never known before. The next morning, the crackle of firewood burning in the fireplace breaks the room's silence. Waking up confused, she realizes they're on the spacious bed, having zero clue how she got off the floor during the night. When she fully opens her eyes, the wife gets emotional noticing her husband offered up his own arm as a pillow for her. Snuggled safely and comfortably next to the guy, the two sleep peacefully, finally making up a real family. Cozied up in her husband's arms, the woman takes a deep breath, feeling massive relief that the night was so sweet and chill. Looking at his peaceful face, she realizes her entire world started changing the exact second she met him. Right then, the MC mumbles quietly, threatening to wake up and putting his partner on high alert. But but the guy just pulls her into an even tighter hug without even opening his eyes. Feeling the heat from that direct contact, she feels her face burning with embarrassment and swears her heart is gonna explode any second. Overwhelmed by a tingling feeling in her chest, the young woman silently wishes that magical moment would last forever. With the first rays of sunlight hitting the cabin, Juan finally snaps out of his deep sleep. The young guy slowly gets up from the makeshift bed, being careful to cover his wife and stepdaughter to protect them from the cold. In a super sweet move, he pets little Dorothy's hair and she just mumbles while sleeping peacefully. Already on his feet, he gets totally caught off guard when his partner walks into the room carrying a bucket of water. Juan gets jump-scared by her sudden appearance first thing in the morning. He awkwardly turns to face her, while she just stands there waiting for some reaction. Wasting no time, the guy splashes a ton of water on his face to try and wake up fully and shake off the sleep. With his head a bit clearer, the young guy greets his wife using his own language, acting super friendly. The young woman tilts her head, totally lost on what he just said. Trying to be polite, the guy asks if she slept well, but immediately notices his partner's face is bright red. She nods super slowly, making the young guy wonder if she's embarrassed because of what he called her. Thinking it over, Juan assumes the word must mean something like darling, babe, or wife in her language. Frustrated by the language barrier, he throws his hands up, really wanting to know what he should actually call her. Pushing past her shyness, the woman stutters and tries to pronounce the word darling in his language, asking to be called that. Finding the whole thing adorable, he says the word out loud, making his wife bury her face from sheer embarrassment. The young woman turns her back instantly, unable to handle her own shyness right at the start of the day. Watching her get all nervous, the MC admits to himself that the urge to tease her is only getting stronger. In a super calm voice, he calls her darling one more time and asks her to look at him, making his partner do a little jump scare hop. The joke ends when little Dorothy wakes up on the makeshift bed, rubbing her sleepy little eyes. Still half asleep, the little girl sits up mumbling about meat with a look of serious hunger. In the blink of an eye, the kid jumps out of bed and bolts across the room like a maniac. Juan tries to get Dorothy's attention, but she completely ignores her adoptive parents. The little blonde girl goes flying past the couple with a look of pure determination on her face. Standing right in front of the containers, the girl is absolutely amazed to see the pieces of food stored away. Hugging the wooden bucket, Dorothy kicks her little legs with joy, bringing a huge smile to Juan and his wife. The little one starts hyping up the meal out loud, while the guy watches the scene having a total blast. The kid is so hyped, she practically dives headfirst into the container. Cracking up at the scene, the MC promises he's gonna go all out on the hunt to keep his family this happy. Already trekking through the dense forest, he guarantees he's ready in case another giant wolf rolls up looking for trouble. Resting the axe on his shoulder, the guy flexes his confidence, claiming he brought a very reliable weapon this time. His footsteps stay solid through the brush, going deeper and deeper into the heart of the mountain. Suddenly, he stops walking when he notices the vibe around him completely shifted. The young guy looks around suspicious, weirded out by the heavy atmosphere that just took over the place. Gripping the axe handle tight, he admits he feels suffocated even though he's in the middle of a massive forest. With a dead serious face, the guy wonders what kind of monstrous beast is about to cross his path. He plants his feet in the dirt, ready for literally anything to pop out of the dark woods. But the MC drops his guard when he spots a figure walking up slowly. Strolling down the same trail, a dude wearing a dark cloak steps out of the shadows. The stranger turns out to be an old man with a super intense and calculating look. Staring at the mysterious old man, Juan is super confused about who this guy is all alone in the forest. The old man scopes the area, noticing the leftover marks from the battle that went down there the night before. Checking out the heavy damage on the ground, he figures the defeated beast was genuinely massive and deadly. In his head, the old man remembers spying on the MC chopping wood, and noticing he didn't even know how to swing the axe right. Finding the whole thing super sus, he can't believe a total rookie took down a monster like that solo, even suspecting an accomplice. Shaking his head, the old guy declares it's impossible, since even a pro hunter would struggle to beat that creature without decent gear. Intrigued, the cloaked man resumes walking toward the young guy. Determined to get to the bottom of this mystery, he decides to clear things up right then and there. The old man closes the gap, walking super slow until he's face to face with the MC. With a fixed, calculating stare, he sizes Juan up from head to toe trying to find some answers. The old-timer's attention instantly snaps to the exposed wound on the guy's arm. Checking out the injury carefully, he notes it's shaped like a wolf bite, but finds it bizarre that the cut is so clean and uninfected. Considering the absolute mess those teeth would make, the old man knows the muscles and veins should be destroyed, making it impossible for the guy to move. The only logical explanation pops into his head, making him suspect this big guy is actually a rare magic user. The old guy recalls that in that world, there are people capable of channeling insane magic. For the commoners of that land, crossing paths with one of these magic warriors was basically impossible. Staring intently at Juan, the old man concludes that if the young guy is really one of these rare magic warriors, the tide just turned in his favor. The cloaked guy mentally celebrates the arrival of his long-awaited chance to flip the script. Standing in the middle of the trail, he's hyped to finally see a shot at revenge land right in his lap before his time is up. Catching the dude's weird energy, Juan keeps his guard up, wondering who the heck this guy is. In the old man's memories, he laments just being a washed-up old guy now, remembering when he was a young dude packed with strength and drive. Back in the day, the path to success meant working in a noble's forest, getting drafted into battles, and standing out to gain power. Chasing greatness, he ditched his dad's protection and headed out as a solo hunter to try his luck as a lumberjack. His grind paid off quick, securing the spot of official lumberjack in a territory stupidly rich in natural resources. However, the catch was the insane competition for firewood, since any regular villager had access to the edges of that noble forest. To lock down his income, the young hunter was forced to dive into the deepest, most isolated parts of the mountain range. Trekking through the rocks, he thought he was just leveling up his terrain knowledge, clueless as to the real reason locals avoided that zone. The landlord's rules were clear, and Brudald's future forest guard had to be physically flawless, and in one piece when it came time to sign the contract. But all his ambition crumbled in a split second when he got ambushed and badly hurt on the mountain, instantly losing his qualification. Collapsed on the dirt in pure despair, the hunter realized way too late about the monstrous threat living in that forbidden territory. In the old man's memories, the mountain was overrun by terrifying creatures known as goblins. Back then, the still young hunter ended up cornered in the dark by those monsters. Those beasts had a habit of capturing human women from the area to force them to expand the horde. With the village already suffering from a lack of people, he tried to fight back but ended up hitting the ground completely vulnerable. Unable to defend himself, the young guy was severely wounded by the creatures, losing his shot at a promising future right there. Snapping back to the present, the old man reflects that he endured a miserable life focused purely on the day he'd finally get his payback. Even holding a grudge against the locals, he lived among them for decades with the sole thought of taking out the ones who ruined everything for him. Walking through the forest, the old-timer admits he stuck it out all this time just so he could wipe out the monster's den once and for all. Standing face to face with Juan, he's absolutely sure he finally found the guy with the firepower needed for this mission. Checking the guy out, he notices he has a physique way beyond the locals and strength like a literal giant. Plus, he spots the MC's arm and is blown away by his crazy regeneration speed after the wolf attack. The cloaked guy concludes the rookie has the potential to become the strongest warrior he's ever seen in his life. Knowing the goblins are hiding in the deep woods, he figures they'll run out of supplies soon and raid the village again. With that in mind, he decides that until that day comes, he's going to train the young guy hardcore to turn him into an elite hunter. The old guy plans to keep the monster den a secret until he locks in a deal, making sure the MC can't back out later. Not getting the guy's intentions at all, Juan gives a polite bow while speaking in his own language. The old hunter instantly notices that even while greeting him, the guy is keeping his weight shifted back without dropping his guard. Ignoring the suspicion, the cloaked man taps the MC's shoulder, letting him know that starting today, he's gonna teach him everything he knows. Juan is confused by the sudden offer, while the old man swears he's going to turn him into an amazing hunter. The next morning, inside the old cabin, the guy gets ready to head out, complaining that the night went by way too fast. The MC walks out the wooden door, ready to kick off his new workday on the mountain. The old guy is waiting outside, noticing the young guy made a point not to invite him inside the house. Juan thinks to himself, he doesn't want to make a habit of letting strangers into the place where his wife and little Dorothy are. Catching the rookie's protective glare toward the cabin, the old man gets the message loud and clear. The veteran hunter finds the guy's defensive vibe interesting, confirming he actually has great instincts. Juan analyzes the old guy's behavior, flashing back to when he used to work and deal with bosses who forced fake friendliness. Adjusting his pack, the guy accepts that if the dude is willing to teach him how to hunt, the best move is to grind hard and learn fast. Right then, Lizzie walks up offering a carefully wrapped lunchbox for the husband's trip. Seeing his wife's dedication, he really appreciates her waking up early just to make that meal in her own clumsy way. Totally charmed, the MC gets a little flustered and admits to himself how incredibly adorable his partner is. Peeking from inside, little Dorothy watches the couple interacting in the cabin's yard. Without a second thought, the little girl bolts outside at top speed. The kid runs up and bumps into her adoptive dad's legs, grabbing his attention. Dorothy walks up totally hyped to join the goodbye, absolutely making the guy's morning. Lizzie helps adjust the gear on her husband's back, making gestures telling him to make sure he eats right during the day. The young guy turns his head looking super happy, feeling his heart melt for finally having a family that takes such good care of him. The wife waves from a distance, wishing him a safe trip with a ton of enthusiasm. Juin tries to repeat her words in the local language, putting in the effort to learn it ASAP. Seeing Lizzie's gentle face, he promises he'll focus on work and be back home soon. Craving some attention, Dorothy tries to reach the guy before he heads off into the forest for good. The little girl throws her hands up and yells, wishing him a safe day at work too. The MC waves back super happy, promising the little one he won't be long. Turning his back to hit the road with the old man, he sighs about the whole thing, admitting he has zero motivation to leave the house. Looking ahead, Juin feels massive peace taking over his mind. Walking toward training, he figures it's gonna be tough to focus on the mountain when his new wife and daughter are this adorable. Already deep in the thick woods, the MC follows the old guy wondering how long they've been walking aimlessly. Frustrated by the silence, he tries to figure out what the dude is planning to show him by walking this deep into the mountain. Juin looks down, zeroing in on the hunter's feet, suspecting the secret to the training must be right there. The old man keeps clearing a path through the trees with incredibly precise and calculated steps. Watching the movement, the guy gets intrigued when he spots something super unusual about the way the man walks. Suddenly, the old guy stops walking and points at the ground, speaking in his mysterious language. The older hunter steps super softly on the dirt, showing off the technique in real time. Checking out the footprints left behind, the young guy notices the marks are way too shallow and different from normal. He figures the dude is using some advanced stealth technique to not make a sound or leave tracks in the forest. Determined to master the skill, Juin accepts he needs to pay super close attention and copy every single move to level up. Wasting no time, the rookie starts mimicking the footwork, trying to spread his own weight out better. The MC starts walking way more carefully, locking in on the new stealth lesson. Noticing the guy's effort and how fast he adapts, the veteran hunter is pretty stoked with the result. The journey continues through thicker trails, with the master teaching him the secrets of the environment. Stopping near a massive tree, the old man makes the student touch the bark so he learns that every zone has its own unique types of wood. Next, the master has Juin draw the terrain layout in the dirt to help him memorize the routes. After hours of grinding, the two finally stop in a rocky area to take a break from the blasting sun. The old man reaches for his supply bag, getting ready for a well-deserved break. Seeing the movement, the young guy realizes it's finally the long-awaited lunch hour. Wiped out and starving, he celebrates the downtime, sitting comfortably on a rock. Juin opens his lunchbox super hyped, anxious to taste the meal his wife made. Staring at the food prepped with so much love, his stomach practically growls, begging for energy. The guy praises how amazing lunch smells, totally hypnotized by the plate. But the hunter violently waves his hand, ordering him to shut that thing immediately. The old man scolds the reckless move, giving the young guy a reality check about the danger. Juin realizes that in the forest, that delicious smell spreads fast and could pull in predatory beasts in the blink of an eye. Putting the untouched meal away, he complains that all of Lizzie's morning effort was for nothing, and that this is probably the last time she'll ever prep something like this. Totally bummed out, the guy feels like crying, while the master gives him a consoling pat on the shoulder. After the break, the two walk up to a rustic, isolated cabin that acts as the hunter's base. Standing in front of the house, the old man holds some gear, and the rookie instantly notices the bow has a really weird shape. Checking out the weird bow in his hands, Juin thinks the only shapes he knows are curved like a D or a C. Holding the different weapon, he wonders how anyone could even shoot using gear like that. The old hunter just hands the bow to the young guy, telling him to take it and follow him through the woods. Walking right behind the master, the MC silently questions if using that thing is even possible. Looking at the sheer size of the weapon, he figures you'd need unbelievable strength to pull back a bow that huge. The old man gets into position, pulling back the heavy string with impressive ease. Locked onto the target, the master proves that even drawing an insane amount of weight, his posture doesn't shift at all. The arrow fires, tearing through the mountain air at terrifying speed. With a violent impact, the projectile buries deep into the trunk of a thick tree. Absolutely blown away by the showcase, the guy realizes this is exactly how you're actually supposed to shoot. Right after, he gets into stance himself and pulls the bowstring back, putting in a ton of effort. The veteran hunter checks the student's posture up close. Trying to keep the weapon steady, Juin is amazed by the old guy's ability to not move a single millimeter during the shot. Then the master orders the guy to keep absolute focus on the objective. The old hunter stresses he needs to burn the words and movements into his brain to become a true hunter. Keeping his aim steady, the MC accepts he needs to study and practice a ton so he can handle things solo. With a determined look, he promises himself he's gonna become a man capable of providing for his wife and daughter. Far away from training, the day rolls on chill and bright outside the old rustic cabin. Inside, little Dorothy is playing on the bed, humming happily about Juan and Lizzie's standout features. The little girl sits on the bed rubbing her belly, extremely satisfied to have a full stomach. With a radiant smile, the little one comments that it feels like the delicious meat is just growing more and more inside her. Tidying up nearby, Lizzie lets out a super sweet and happy laugh. Dorothy watches her adoptive mom affectionately, noticing she's been laughing way more often ever since Juan came into their lives. The kid remembers with a bit of sadness that before this change, neither of them used to smile much in that house. Soaking up the peaceful vibe, the girl admits that hearing her laugh brings a cozy feeling, like sitting next to a warm fireplace. But the little girl's mind starts filling up with doubts about the guy being around. She tries to process the situation, remembering Lizzie was married to her late father, and now the new guy is her new husband. With that, Dorothy pictures herself walking next to the couple, fully aware they aren't her real parents. Insecurity takes over the little one's heart, terrified that Juan might just take his wife with him someday and leave her. Totally bummed out, she wonders if they'll also ditch her eventually, repeating the abandonment she went through before. The old trauma hits hard, bringing back memories of cruel words calling her useless. The terrifying image of her dad pops into her mind, the guy who treated her with so much hostility, just for not being a boy who could help on the mountain. Feeling her chest tighten, the little girl looks down, terrified she has no value to her new family. Suddenly, the kid jumps off the bed, determined to check on the food before anything else. Seeing the wooden bucket still intact, Dorothy breathes a sigh of relief, confirming the meat is safe for now. Then she peeks around the corner of the room and realizes Lizzie vanished from sight. The kid hides near the door, wondering if her mom thinks she's playing hide-and-seek. A loud noise from outside instantly spooks the little girl. The little one cracks the wooden door open just a bit to peek out at the yard. Shaking with fear, Dorothy recognizes the village locals and remembers how they always acted so rude and violent. The little girl runs to hide behind some rocks, scared to death her adoptive mom is gonna get hurt like before. One of the intruders yells aggressively, demanding to know where that strong smell of food is coming from and accusing the woman of stealing. Pushed against the wall, Lizzie tries to defend herself, saying her new husband hunted it and brought the food home. The guy laughs right in her face, full of mockery, doubting a newbie could actually hunt in that forest. Not backing down, the wife insists the intruders step inside and see for themselves there's no stolen goods. Completely out of patience, the guy tells Lizzie to shut her mouth and shoves her super brutally. The locals barge into the dark cabin, snooping around every single corner. But they quickly spot the huge wolf pelt laid out, completely blown away by the find. The group leader strokes the dark fur, celebrating hitting the jackpot, fully aware that thing is worth a fortune. Taken over by greed, the guy orders his goons to trash the whole house looking for more valuables. Hiding in the dark corner, Dorothy shrinks down, terrified by the intruders moving around. The little girl holds her breath, mentally begging they don't find the stashed meat. Right then, Lizzie rushes into the room in a panic to try and stop the robbery. The wife spreads her arms in front of the wolf pelt, bravely blocking the men from getting any closer. Standing her ground, she confronts the intruders, declaring that it belongs to her family now. The group leader glares at the woman with a look of pure hatred and annoyance. In an act of pure cowardice, he lands a heavy blow on Lizzie just because she tried to resist. From the impact, the young woman is thrown violently against the cabin's wooden floor. Collapsed and in serious pain, she groans quietly, unable to get back up right away. Watching that horrible scene, little Dorothy completely freezes in a state of shock. Lizzie tries to recover on the floor while the men surround her threateningly. She slowly lifts her head, staring at the intruders with a look of complete helplessness. The kid remembers that in the past, she used to pretend she didn't know anything just to protect herself from stuff like this. Crying quietly in her hiding spot, Dorothy feels guilty, remembering how she was always treated like a burden for hiding. The intruder mocks Lizzie's resistance, asking if she thinks her life upgraded just because she got a new husband. The sidekick chimes in that mountain guardians are tough to find, and there won't be any issues if they just keep their mouths shut. Moving fast, the men grab the wife by the arms, threatening to drag her deep into the forest. While the goons gather up the valuables, Lizzie struggles to break free from the leader's grip. The guy threatens to come back in the dead of night and burn the whole cabin down if she snitches to her husband. Dragging the young woman outside, he laughs at the whole thing, saying he came up here on a whim and ended up striking gold. The door slams shut, locking the room and leaving little Dorothy totally alone in the dark. The little girl bolts frantically toward the wooden door. Getting outside, the kid looks around terrified, feeling like something really bad is going to happen to her adoptive mom. Unable to hold back the panic, Dorothy bursts into tears, sobbing from absolute fear. Leaning on a crate in the yard, the kid screams at the top of her lungs, calling out for Juan and begging him to hurry back. Far from there, the desperate scream echoes through the forest, carrying the awful feeling that Lizzie is being hauled away by force by the intruders. Walking calmly down the treeline trail next to the master, the guy hears the old hunter comment that today felt way too long. But suddenly the MC's footsteps stop dead in the middle of the path, catching the old man's attention, who notices the sudden vibe shift. In a huge rush, he bows in respect to the veteran hunter, quickly thanking him for all the lessons to. Right then, the piercing cry reaches his ears clear as day, making the young guy recognize Dorothy's voice instantly. Snapping his head toward the cabin, he realizes the little girl would never scream like that unless something was seriously wrong. Heart-pounding, the guy sprints through the forest worried sick, wondering if something awful went down while he was out. Running at top speed through the trees, he swears to himself he won't show any mercy if someone messed with his new family. The second he hits the clearing, the MC goes into shock seeing the infuriating sight of the villagers dragging his wife. Taken over by uncontrollable rage, he promises to deal with those cowards, no matter who they are or what they want. Giving them zero time to react, the young guy charges in a flash, leaving the goons totally confused by the sudden ambush. Operating purely on instinct, the guy lands a devastating punch straight to the redhead's face, using all his built-up strength. From the impact of the blow, the attacker is launched into the air and crashes violently into the dirt, leaving the other goons stunned. On the ground holding her bruised face, the woman calls her husband's name through tears, relieved he got there in time. Stomping the grass with an intimidating stance, the MC corners the rest of the group, making the cowards back up in pure terror. Seeing the guy's ridiculous strength, the beefiest goon backs away terrified, throwing his hands up in a desperate attempt to block. Giving the enemy zero time to react, Juan delivers a clean, high kick right to the attacker's face. With the heavy impact, the dude collapses to the ground groaning in pain, falling defeated right at the MC's wife's feet. Pissed off by the situation, the last blonde intruder lunges furiously, throwing a punch at the young guy. Capitalizing on the opening, the guy dodges with ease and grabs the opponent, lifting him right off the ground. In one fluid motion, he slams the attacker upside down with brutal force. The goon crashes violently into the dirt, taking the full damage of that massive drop. Right then, the MC mounts the downed intruder and raises his fist, knowing he can't just stop there. Dropping heavy blows, he thinks about how cruel people can be, absolutely certain that if he shows weakness, they'll come back to harass his family again. Standing back up with an intimidating presence, the guy decides he needs to permanently burn fear into the minds of those cowards so they never step foot there again. In that moment of rage, Lizzie walks up from behind and grabs her husband's arm, getting his attention. The young woman calls the MC's name, making the guy loosen his stance when he hears the desperation in her voice. Suddenly, she screams in panic, telling him to watch out, as the defeated intruder sneaks up from behind wielding a sickle. Using his insane reflexes, Juan spins around and catches the coward's wrist midair, completely stopping the blade before it hits. Without hesitating, he twists the attacker's arm with scary precision, making the dude scream in agony while trying to break free. With eyes radiating a terrifying aura, the young guy preps the final blow, fueled by pure rage. The old hunter comes sprinting in, ordering the guy to stop the attack right then and there. Placing a hand on the rookie's chest, the old man tells him to cool off while the villager runs away mumbling. Using a firm tone in the local language, the master points at the cabin, asking if he can't see how terrified his daughter is from all this chaos. Surprised by the interruption, the wife turns toward the house, worried about the little one. Still hiding in the corner, Dorothy is crying her eyes out over everything that just happened. Seeing the little girl sobbing, the young guy snaps out of it and just stares at the scene in silence. Smoke drifts up from the cabin roof as the situation outside finally starts chilling out. Looking at her husband, the young woman thinks about how gentle he always seemed, like he didn't even know how to get mad, only to realize he can actually be terrifyingly furious. In that moment, the horrible memories of her late husband flood back, making her terrified that he might be just like the rest of them. With the defeated victims lying around, she admits fear took over fast, scared she'd end up getting treated the exact same way. But then she catches Juan's gentle look, feeling all that terror just evaporate instantly. Looking at his face, she figures out those eyes didn't want to hurt her, they were just trying to protect her at all costs. He just looks at his partner, worried sick that she's scared of him. The guy calls her name super softly and steps closer, while she wonders why her own reaction freaked her out so much. She tries to calm her own nerves by gripping the hem of her dress tight. Feeling her hands shaking, she wonders why she's hesitating so much when there's nothing left to fear, and because of it, he thinks she's afraid of him. Seeing the sad look on the guy's face, she mentally begs him not to make that expression. The young woman thinks it would be so easy to just say she isn't scared, but she hits the wall of the language barrier. Shaking even more, she waves her arms in the air, trying to build up the courage to close the gap between them. Suddenly, the wife calls his name out loud, fully committed to showing her real feelings. With total confidence, she takes a few steps toward him on the grass. She walks up and grabs his hands, taking the guy completely by surprise. The young woman squeezes his hands, feeling that the exact second she felt that warm touch, she was absolutely sure of something important. With a calm smile, the wife thinks to herself that as long as she's by this man's side, she'll feel safe and nobody will ever be able to hurt her again. Then she gently interlocks her fingers with his. Thanking him from the bottom of her heart, she smiles beautifully with teary eyes, overflowing with relief. The guy just stands there admiring her in silence, processing the sweetness and honesty of that move. Resting her face against his hand super cutely, the partner cries, while he softly whispers her name. Overcome with massive emotion, he pulls her into a warm hug, quietly saying thank you. Hugging his wife tight, the young guy mentally questions why she feels so grateful to him. He reflects that he's the one who should really be saying thanks for everything, for actually getting a chance to start over. Then a faint noise from the cabin makes the young woman pull away from the hug abruptly. Peeking shyly through the crack, little Dorothy shows up sniffing and looking super teary-eyed. Quickly, the mom calls her husband and points at the cabin to show where the little girl is. Sprinting across the grass, she calls out to the little one looking super worried, while the MC follows right behind. Reaching the front of the house, she crouches down worried and asks if the girl is okay after all that panic. But the mom quickly backs up, totally lost on why Dorothy is hesitating and shaking so much in front of her. Huddled on the doorstep, the little girl can barely move from all the anxiety. In her head, the little one remembers that she was the one who begged for help, but seeing her adoptive dad's devastating strength against the attackers ended up being pretty scary for a kid. Painful memories from the past crash into Dorothy's thoughts, bringing up images of faces covered in bruises caused by the bad people from her old life. Overcome by the fear of suffering the exact same fate one day, she remembers when they used to force her to swallow her tears so they wouldn't treat her even worse. Convinced that this whole mess was her fault, the girl bursts into tears and runs away in a panic. Holding the little girl in her arms, the wife asks, totally confused, what Dorothy means by all that. Terrified of being ignored and abandoned like in her old family, the kid figures she needs to apologize right away so everything goes back to normal between them. Kneeling by the door, Lizzie tries to comfort little Dorothy, apologizing for hiding instead of helping her, and begging the little girl not to leave her alone. The young woman admits she only pretended not to know her earlier because she was scared to death those bad men would find her. In a tight hug, she promises the kid has absolutely zero reason to feel guilty. Trying to calm her daughter down, the wife promises the scare is over, and everything's gonna be fine now because their dad is right there to protect them. But hearing the word dad leaves the little girl super confused, instantly remembering her old dad passed away a long time ago. Lizzie explains super sweetly that Juan is her new husband, making the whole situation a lot clearer. The kid puts the pieces together fast, realizing that this actually makes the guy her brand new dad. Just to be sure, the woman asks if she gets that she's her adoptive mom now, getting a very shy yes in return. It finally clicks for Dorothy if she's Liz's daughter, then Juan is officially her dad. Amazed, she peeks at the guy's towering figure outside, still trying to get used to the huge news. She asks one more time if he's really her dad, and her mom confirms it with absolute certainty. Petting the little one's head, the wife promises Juan is completely different from the cruel man who passed away, and is someone who actually protects them. The young woman explains that the only reason the guy took down those scary intruders was because she asked for help. Hearing that, the little girl looks at the family's hero through the crack in the door with a whole new perspective. Totally blown away by the discovery, Dorothy feels her heart race with joy as she fully accepts Juan as her real dad. Checking the guy out from a distance, the little girl notices his huge build and giant hands, realizing just how insanely strong her new dad really is. Riding that wave of hype, she runs excitedly toward the yard, amazed to have such an awesome protector for her and her mom. In the kid's mind, memories pop up of how he never treated her badly and always hugs her super sweetly at night. Dorothy also remembers his gentle vibe, the day she got her very own name, something that changed her life forever. Thrilled by all this, the kid thinks it's just amazing that someone this good is her dad. Taken totally by surprise, Juan gets a jump scare when he hears the little girl's voice calling for him super loud. The little girl runs toward the guy, eyes sparkling with pure happiness. The MC throws his arms open instantly, ready to welcome his daughter with all the love in the world. With a jump full of energy, Dorothy throws herself into his arms, getting caught in a super tight, warm hug. Holding the little one tight, the young guy admits he has no clue what she's screaming in the local language, but somehow feels like he understands the meaning perfectly. Soaking up that precious moment, he rests his face against the kid's head, feeling massive peace. But suddenly, the emotional vibe gets cut off when the guy catches a slightly suspicious. Looking down, he notices the little girl's clothes are totally soaked after all that anxiety. Seeing the kid's innocent and glowing face, Juin actually feels bad for noticing the accident, but knows he needs to change her clothes fast so she doesn't catch a cold. Moving quick, the family's hero runs toward his wife carrying the little one, so they can fix the problem together. The scene turns into an adorable family moment, with Lizzie hugging her husband from behind while he holds the little girl. Then little Dorothy's attention gets hooked by something super important they totally forgot about nearby. Pointing excitedly at the ground, she lets out a happy yell, announcing she found the meat they stashed earlier. The blonde little girl sprints at top speed across the yard, completely ignoring the knocked-out intruders on the way. With ridiculous determination, she dashes toward her biggest treasure of the day. Reaching her goal, Dorothy stops right in front of the wooden bucket packed with fresh meat. Without a second thought, the little one hugs the container affectionately, acting like she's protecting her own life. The kid's eyes literally sparkle seeing that the family's precious food is still safe inside. Running frantically right behind her, Juin and Lizzie try to catch up before she makes a mess. Clinging to the heavy bucket, Dorothy puts in insane effort trying to drag the container all by herself. The MC is blown away by the kid's willpower, thinking it's wild she can even budge that thing. The wife breathes a sigh of relief, while the guy figures his daughter's obsession with meat is bordering on scary. To fix the situation, Juin steps up and lifts the wooden container with zero effort. Little Dorothy ends up getting lifted right along with the bucket, amazed by her dad's ridiculous strength. Getting that look of pure admiration just over a pot of meat, the young guy jokes to himself that being this little girl's hero is actually the easiest job ever. Worried about the mess, the wife makes gestures asking her husband to take the food inside the house right away. The young woman insists he also needs to get little Dorothy inside safely, since it's still super dangerous out there. Listening to her, Juin carries the kid and the bucket into the rustic cabin. Back outside again, the guy wipes the sweat off his forehead, feeling the weight of all that chaos. He walks with heavy steps toward the intruders who are still knocked out cold on the grass. The MC's look goes dark, taken over by a terrifying aura, making it clear he isn't done dealing with those cowards yet. But the old hunter steps in front of him, blocking his path and demanding he stop right there. Shaking his head no, the master warns the rookie that he can't finish off those people. Anger boils in Juin's chest as he realizes that if he gets arrested, he'll be thrown right back into prison life and lose everything all over again. Looking at the cabin door where his family is waiting, the young guy accepts that now he has important people to protect and can't just act on impulse. Glaring at the defeated goons with pure disgust, he warns them he memorized every single one of their faces and promises a terrible fate if they ever cross his path again. Taking the old man's advice, the guy finally backs off and leaves the downed attackers behind. The hunter points at the crates left by the intruders, suggesting the young guy take everything, since those are essential tools for surviving on the mountain. Taking the cue, the MC opens the cabin door, reuniting with his safe wife and daughter in the lit-up room. He walks in hauling the recovered crates, guaranteeing more resources for his family's future. Dropping the heavy wooden box on the floor, the guy starts organizing the house's new. Gripping a hammer tight, he thinks about his painful past and decides that losing a family once was already more than enough. A look of massive relief washes over his face when he realizes that, this time, he managed to arrive in time to stop a tragedy. Turning to his wife and daughter, the MC swears to himself he'll protect both of them at any cost, no matter what challenges come their way. In a super gentle move, he touches Lizzie's bruised face, wishing he could use his healing magic to make that wound vanish instantly. Holding her husband's hand sweetly, the young woman tries to calm him down, promising she's completely fine. Trying to cheer his partner up, Juin pinches her cheeks in a really cute and goofy way. In a quick, unexpected move, he scoops his wife up in his arms, leaving her totally stunned. The guy defends his move, saying the cabin floor is way too cold for her to be walking around barefoot after everything she just went through. Suddenly, the young guy's attention gets pulled by something unbelievable happening right in front of him. Lizzie herself goes into shock when she realizes the bruise on her face literally just vanished. Holding the woman in his arms, the MC wonders in awe if his weird magic training actually had practical results. A victorious look takes over the guy's face, and he celebrates the new level up totally hyped. Hyped, he figures he finally mastered healing magic, leaving his wife totally confused by the news. Way out there in the cruel villager's town, an angry comment echoes, questioning if that idiot newbie completely lost his mind after the fight. In the village, the leader rants while his wife chases a chicken, complaining that the newbie barely respects his own master and keeps sticking his nose in everything. Annoyed, the woman turns around asking if giving up a little fabric for the mountain guardian really bothers him that much. Clapping back, he complains about wasting material they'd been hoarding for 10 years, but she argues right back, saying they desperately need the guardian. The guy tries to defend himself, saying he had no choice since the guy looked like an experienced fighter, and if more people got hurt, the year's harvest would be totally ruined. Calling his wife a fool, he claims she can't see the big picture, but she snaps back, asking what big master plan made him hand over the fabric so easily. Then old Gus reports to the leader that the newbie had beast bite marks that weren't there before, and that healed incredibly fast. Mind blown by the info, the village chief connects the dots and realizes the so-called mountain guardian is actually a healing mage. With his hand on his chin, the man thinks he needs to handle this situation super carefully, since even nobles would kill for a mage that op. Imagining the royals' endless cash, he quickly calculates he could sell the guy for an absolute fortune if some VIP gets interested. Consumed by greed, the chief cracks a slimy smile, plotting to live a life way above a simple village leader if everything goes his way. Walking through the streets, he chills out, remembering the locals are way too ignorant to even notice a healing mage is living right there. But his biggest fear is that rumors will spread, and some guild or noble will swoop in and snatch the guy away before he can cash in. Determined not to fumble the bag, he decides the only reliable guy is old Gus, who will keep tabs on the kid while he scouts for a noble ready to hire the mage. Changing his tone with his wife, the leader tells her to try and cozy up to the guardian's wife, warning her the guy learned how to hunt scary fast and is pretty sharp. The woman listens closely while he warns that the newbie is on a whole different level and might figure out they're skimming goods if they aren't careful. Grabbing his wife by the shoulders, he suggests she make friends with the guy's wife, hoping to score some rabbit pelts for way cheaper because of it. The woman agrees with the idea and turns to leave, tossing out that there are chores women have to do together anyway. Watching his partner walk away, the leader figures they should probably return some of the stuff they stole from the guardian's cabin. Staring at his own foot, the guy admits the young dude is way out of the league of regular prisoners, and ignoring that now would 100 backfire later. Meanwhile, back on the mountain, a piece of metal gets tossed straight into the blazing fire of a fireplace. Watching the fire crackle, a voice complains it's a shame to have to do this, but accepts there's no other way. With a twisted smile lit by the flames, old Gus thinks to himself that you have to lose a little meat to get to the bone. A few days later, the vibe at the old wooden cabin is pure peace, with a happy tune echoing through the yard. Stretching his arms outside, Juin notices happily that his wife seems to be in a great mood again. The young woman carefully folds the fabrics, while the guy figures the village chief sent more gifts that morning, thinking the first batch wasn't it. Seeing little Dorothy all smiles with the stuff, he wonders if getting old junk back really brings that much joy, remembering his wife wasn't even this hyped when she got magically healed. With a loving look, the MC realizes that watching his partner makes him see that true happiness is in the simple things in life. Totally charmed, the guy admits to himself that this is exactly why he's so crazy about the amazing woman he married. Already geared up for work, he announces he's heading out, catching his wife by surprise while she folds clothes. In a super cute moment, the young woman waves and says bye with a sweet smile, while Juin heads out to hunt, feeling on top of the world. Standing at the cabin door, the wife waves and tells her husband to be careful hunting on the mountain today. Trekking toward the forest, Juin recalls old Gus mentioning today's training was all about rabbits. Walking past the chopped firewood, the guy keeps going, hoping they actually manage to catch some prey. The image of little Dorothy dancing with a chunk of meat pops into his head, making him really want to bring home a rabbit to hype up his hungry daughter. Gripping his axe tight, the young guy hesitates for a sec, doubting he'll actually have the guts to take down the cute little animal when he finds it. Shaking his head to snap out of it, he tells himself he needs to drop his modern mindset if he wants to survive as a hunter. But the second he pictures a fluffy white bunny, his brain instantly morphs the animal into an adorable version of his own wife. Facepalming in total despair, the MC realizes that his partner looking so much like the animal turns this hunting mission into psychological torture. Stepping into the sunlit woods, the guy prays hard that the rabbit they find is the ugliest creature on the planet. Hiding in the dark bushes, a shady monster with glowing red eyes tracks the rookie hunter's moves. Back at the cabin after his shift, Juin breathes a sigh of relief, glad to be done with his yard chores for the day. Looking at the massive stack of organized firewood, he realizes he's fetched water and chopped all the wood, but still has a ton of free time left. Stretching his tired muscles, the guy thinks about using this downtime to practice his magic skills a bit. Staring at his own hands in frustration, he complains that healing injuries got super easy, but he still can't spark even a tiny flame. The memory of the intense flames roasting the giant wolf comes flooding back, leaving the young guy confused about why the power only triggered that one night. With a thoughtful look, Juin wonders if the magic only fired off because he was in extreme danger. Taking a deep breath to lock in, he decides to try circulating the power in his energy core just like in fantasy novels. Striking a dramatic pose with his hand out, the guy screams the name of a firestorm spell at the top of his lungs. When absolutely nothing happens, he drops his hand feeling dumb, admitting he wasn't expecting much anyway, so he wasn't even disappointed. In the young guy's head, he pictured being little Dorothy's hero using flashy magic, since healing doesn't have cool sound effects and doesn't exactly impress the little girl. Staring at his own finger, he lets out a bummed sigh because he really wanted to show off some fire to hype up his daughter. Suddenly, tiny sparks start popping off the tips of his fingers, catching the MC totally off guard. A small flame finally lights up on his index finger, and he celebrates the win even though it looks like a cheap lighter. Hearing the noise in the yard, Dorothy opens the cabin door and peeks at what her adoptive dad is doing. The kid's little eyes go wide, shining with pure awe seeing real magic happening. Pointing all hyped up, the little girl yells in amazement that her dad's hand is making fire out of nowhere. Worried about safety, the guy warns the kid she's way too close and might get burned by the flame. Totally hypnotized by the light, Dorothy ignores the warning and says she needs to run and tell her mom about her dad's awesome magic. Spooked by the running, the wife rushes out of the cabin calling the little girl's name in the middle of the yard. The second she spots her husband, the young woman freezes and covers her mouth in total shock seeing the flames dancing on his hand. Super proud, Dorothy points at her dad wanting to show off the magic, while Juan puts in crazy effort to keep the flame alive, wanting to impress them both even more. The wife smiles amazed by the scene, and the guy celebrates being able to use both types of spells, figuring in the future he can at least light a campfire with zero effort. Not making a huge deal out of it after the initial shock, mom and daughter turn around and start walking away, leaving the young guy a bit let down by their quick reaction. The two fast walk back inside the cabin, completely ignoring the hunter in the yard. Alone on the grass, Juan is totally lost and grumbles that he put in actual effort to get that spark. Staring at his flaming hand, the MC shakes his arm trying to figure out how to turn this magic off. Failing completely, he just gives up and decides to chill with the little flame until it decides to go out on its own. Suddenly, the fire just vanishes in the blink of an eye, leaving the guy even more confused. Flexing his fingers, he complains that the magic in this world is way too bizarre and he can't wrap his head around how it works at all. Walking through the wooden door, the family's hero enters the chill vibe of the old cabin. Right off the bat, he finds little Dorothy leaning over the wooden bucket and calls the kid's attention. The kid turns around looking teary and super frustrated, complaining that the piece of meat got way too small. Seeing their adopted daughter so bummed, the couple realizes the lack of endless food is making the girl really upset. With a determined look, Juan promises himself that today he's bringing home fresh rabbit meat to keep the family happy. Already back on the grind in the forest, the guy is caught off guard by old Gus asking if he's ready for the hunt. Already in the woods, old Gus steps out from the trees, marking his attendance to kick off the training. The guy grips his bow tight, announcing he's ready to head out on the hunt. At the cabin door, Lizzie and little Dorothy say goodbye, wishing him a super safe trip through the mountain. He pets the little girl's head, praising her for being on her best behavior. The MC also tells his wife to be super careful and keep the house secure while he's out. Without missing a beat, the young woman steps up and gives her husband a super sweet hug, resting her face on his chest. Feeling left out, Dorothy looks up and announces she wants some of that attention too. Finding the whole thing adorable, he leans down to give his daughter a kiss, while Lizzie watches the whole thing super happy in the background. The young guy kisses the kid's cheek, leaving the little one glowing with happiness. But suddenly he catches a familiar smell and asks if the little girl was sneaking meat again, getting a super enthusiastic yes that leaves the mom shook. Far from the cabin, the journey through the mountain kicks off, focusing on finding the traps set by the master. During the hike, Gus keeps dropping knowledge, pointing out the trees along the trail. The old hunter also makes the rookie stop constantly to check out animal tracks and droppings in the dirt. Right then, the guy's footsteps stop dead when the old man orders him not to move a single inch. The master points silently ahead, signaling they finally found the target of their training. The MC's eyes go wide, completely surprised and clueless about what he's looking at. Right in front of him is a bizarre creature with sharp fangs, which the old man claims is a rabbit, leaving the young guy seriously doubting that info. He instantly asks if the beast evolved from a kangaroo, thanks to the weirdness of this alternate world. Furious, the creature lunges aggressively, trying to break free from the trap at all costs. Gus checks the animal's energy and figures it got caught pretty recently, making it the perfect setup for the student's first kill. But the master warns that finishing off a beast that fights back is never a simple or easy task. He explains it's a completely different vibe from hunting a defenseless animal, claiming the feeling of your first hunt sticks in your brain forever. Super calmly, the old guy orders his student to grab the arrow he handed him earlier. The hunter praises the guy's brain for already picking up so many words in the local language since arriving at the mountain. Then he declares that this clutch moment completely belongs to the rookie and steps back. Seeing the beast thrashing around, the master says he's gonna show him firsthand just how brutal hunting actually is. The old man tells the student to close the gap and get a bit closer to the tied-up animal. While the guy moves up with his bow, Gus tells him to aim carefully and shoot the animal's leg first. Prepping the weapon, Juin hears that at first, the prey just looks like another woodland creature. The veteran hunter reflects that the mountain is fair and doesn't play favorites with humans, warning that any pointless cruelty will be paid back when the beasts have the upper hand. The master stresses that today's lesson should never be forgotten if the guy wants to make it back home in one piece in the future. Drawing the string, Juin aims at the leg, thinking this shot won't finish the target. It'll just cause useless, painful suffering. The rookie hesitates with the weapon drawn, totally confused why he's being forced to act so brutally. Losing patience, the old man aggressively points his finger, demanding he shoot the leg first and only then aim for the head. The bizarre beast lets out a loud screech, trying to intimidate the duo and escape the danger. Staring down the prey, the MC gets a bitter taste in his mouth, remembering how humiliating his first day in this unforgiving world was. His mind flashes back to the terrifying moment he woke up weak and locked inside that filthy cart. Memories of the people tossed into that awful space, where humanity was basically gone, hit him hard. Snapping back to reality over the beast's screeches, he admits he knows nothing about hunting, but swears he totally understands how survival works out here. With his bow raised, he finally gets that the master is pushing his limits to turn him into a real hunter. The string is released without warning, and the arrow rips through the mountain air at crazy speed. But the projectile barely misses the target, burying into the dirt right behind the beast's leg. The beast gets a massive jump scare from the near miss but keeps thrashing without a single scratch. Super embarrassed and nervous, the young guy stammers, trying to convince the master he just grazed it. Totally out of patience with the miss, the hunter orders him to shoot again, making the guy question if he really has to do a replay. The old man demands he aim directly at the front legs this time, while the guy pulls the string, feeling like all this cruelty is overkill. Then he gets a reality check and decides he needs to put Lizzie and Dorothy's well-being way above the pity he feels for the animal. Locking onto the hunt, he tries to ignore the beast's crying, repeating to himself that it's just normal sounds from a wild animal. Fueled by the massive drive to protect and provide for his new family, the young guy lets the arrow fly with purpose. The projectile flies straight for the creature's glowing eye, while the guy accepts carrying the guilt if it guarantees the safety of his girls. Silence takes over the forest after he chooses to purposefully drag out the prey's agony, instead of finishing the job fast. Sitting near the defeated creature, he reflects that there's nothing poetic about hunting. It's an act against the natural order of the world. Staring at his own shaking hands, Juin understands that this is the harsh reality of the food chain, and swears to never wipe that moment from his memory. The master packs the caught prey into a sack and tells the young guy to haul it all home, leaving the rookie shook at the sheer amount of food. Showing a lot of satisfaction, the old hunter sincerely thanks the student for his effort. The two start walking back through the woods, with the old man letting him know they just need to check the last trap of the day. But Juin notices something weird about the load and quickly looks over to investigate. He checks out the already down prey that's weighing heavy on his back. The master points to the last target, telling him to hurry up, but the rookie notices the fur on this animal is way different from the rest. Intrigued by the visual swap, the MC stops walking immediately and asks the old hunter to hold up a sec. Juin suggests that instead of taking out this last animal, they could just raise it to farm more resources later. Gesturing hyped up, he tries to explain to the master that their fast breeding would lock down an emergency food supply for tough times. Caught totally off guard by the wild idea, the master tries to play it cool, finding the guy's creativity pretty funny. The old hunter agrees with the plan on the spot, getting the student super hyped about the green light to switch up the strat. With extreme care, the guy ties the prey up tight to make sure it gets carried back to the village alive and safe. The capture mission ends on a high note, and the MC proudly carries his family's new investment on his shoulders. Tiptoeing to avoid hurting the animal, he adjusts the sack with impressive care. A tiny, round, super fluffy rabbit waits quietly in the grass, lit up by the sun. Far away from there, old Gus's rustic base stays isolated and super peaceful deep in the mountain. Inside the wooden structure, the young guy reflects that back in his old solo life, he never found any drive to start a family. Focused on carving something with his knife, he admits that spending time on these manual tasks brings a really cozy feeling. The MC admires the carefully carved object, feeling he finally found a real reason to live and grind hard every single day. Suddenly, his attention gets hooked by a curious detail on one of the master's shelves. He walks up to some old wooden plaques and realizes the carved symbols make up the alphabet for this world's language. Hyped at the chance to communicate better, Juin grabs the plaques, convinced that mastering the language will make living with his wife and daughter way easier. Juin points at the wooden objects using a ton of gestures, trying to ask old Gus in the local language to teach him how to read. The hunter catches the effort and asks, looking a bit shocked, if the rookie seriously wants to learn that. Staring at the guy with a dead serious face, the master asks if that's really what he wants. Without hesitating, the MC confidently confirms he wants to learn at all costs. Faced with that kind of determination, the old man scratches his head a bit unsure, trying to process the totally random request. Right after, he turns around and walks silently deeper into the wooden base. Digging through an old chest in the corner, the hunter mumbles that the guy will also need some other stuff for this training. Juin holds onto the plaques in a small pouch super tight, begging one more time to be taught. With that, Gus just agrees to hand over all the study gear to him. Carrying a large green supply sack, the master tells the student to follow him. The young guy immediately takes the order, showing he's ready to go. Sitting at a wooden table, the MC goes full focus mode on his studies, using a quill to practice writing on a scrap of old paper. Watching the guy's dedication from the back, the master thinks he's a super weird dude, not getting why a commoner in this isolated spot would even need to read. The letter plaques hang on the wall, while Gus remembers buying that stuff back in the day, hoping some noble would hire him if he got military honors. Resting his legs, the old hunter regrets the time he wasted learning to read. He admits that if he knew his life would end up like this, he wouldn't have even bothered studying. But he quickly turns his head, pushing away those dark thoughts, deciding that's all in the past and doesn't matter anymore. Looking at the sunlit mountains through the window, he figures it's time to scout for signs of goblins in the forest. Since the creatures probably set up a hidden village, the master knows he has to push even deeper into the range. Shady figures with glowing red eyes lurk in the dark woods. The old man knows that just like regular animals in the spring, the activity of those beasts spikes massively this time of year. Then the hunter notices the rookie locked into his studies, thinking about how his learning curve is scary fast. The master is absolutely sure that, with the right help, Juin will turn into a warrior more than capable of handling himself. Limping along, old Gus complains his busted leg is hurting like crazy. He figures this is a clear sign that it won't be long before he runs into the goblin horde. With a dark, determined look on his face, the master hunter swears to himself he's going to wipe out every single one of those twisted creatures. Far from there, the peaceful wooden cabin sits isolated in the trees under the dale. Inside the house, Lizzie sews a large piece of fabric while little Dorothy asks, super hyped, if the new clothes are for her and when they'll be done. The mom confirms it with endless patience. With a sweet smile, the wife asks if the little girl knows how many times she's repeated that exact same question. Bursting with energy, the kid replies she has absolutely no clue. Right then, the sound of the door opening cuts the chat short. The young woman pauses her sewing and calls her husband's name, surprised he's back so early. The second she spots the guy, Dorothy throws her little hands up and sprints full speed, yelling for her adoptive dad. Juin walks in with a warm smile, hauling his gear and a massive sack. Riding the vibe, he scoops the little girl up effortlessly. The kid cheers, proudly bragging about the new clothes, leaving the young guy totally charmed by the news. Suddenly, the family hero's attention is snagged by something moving on the floor, and he lets out a confused sound. The huge supply sack dumped on the wood starts moving all by itself, kind of spooking the room. Absolutely amazed by the sight, Dorothy points at the object asking if it's some kind of magic bag. Kneeling on the floor without dropping the kid, Juin starts untying the knot one-handed. Watching her husband's skills, Lizzie praises his strength, while the guy promises his daughter it isn't magic and says he's gonna show her what's inside. To speed things up, the wife reaches out and offers to help crack the mystery bag open. The second it opens, the head of a round, super fluffy rabbit pops out like a jump scare. Resting on her dad's arm, little Dorothy's eyes go wide, getting an adorable shock seeing the animal actually move. Back on the floor, little Dorothy chases the bunny as it hops freely around the cabin. Worried about her daughter's hype, Lizzie reaches out and asks the kid to chill for a sec, promising she'll catch the animal for her. The young woman carefully brings her hands close, trying to capture the cute beast that just popped out of the bag. But the rabbit does a sudden forward hop, spooking the wife who immediately jumps back so she doesn't get hit. Little Dorothy watches the whole thing totally glued, amazed by the new pet's agility. Suddenly, the little girl points at the animal looking shocked and stutters, saying the bunny looks really weird. The pet's fluffy ears stand out as the family spots a strange little detail right on top of its head. A white horn sits dead center on the little animal's forehead, and it just stares at the room looking super innocent and confused. The little girl covers her mouth, dying of cuteness, thinking that weird feature is the most adorable thing ever. Operating purely on mom instincts, the wife warns the kid not to get any closer, terrified the horn might actually be dangerous. Super freaked out by the situation, the mom takes tiny steps backward, promising she'll try to catch the beast to protect her daughter. Heart pounding and looking nervous, Lizzie gears up to lunge and grab the unknown animal. Moving fast, she finally grabs the bunny tight, totally surprised she actually pulled it off that easily. Holding the animal in her arms, the young woman thinks it's weird, knowing a normal rabbit would never get caught without a serious fight. While checking out the fluffy pet, she notices the creature's eyes are getting heavy, making the wife realize something super sketchy is going on. The little animal shakes with fear in the wife's arms, who notices something's wrong and says, looking really worried, that the rabbit actually looks hurt. Tugging on her adoptive mom's apron, little Dorothy feels bad for the sad little animal and asks if it's in a lot of pain. In the blink of an eye, the little girl runs over to her dad and yells, all worked up, begging him to save the hurt bunny. Juin processes the word hurt, remembering his newly unlocked healing skills. Placing a hand on his chest, looking super confident, the guy asks Lizzie to hand over the animal, promising he's gonna fix the problem right now. The young woman slowly walks over and hands the pet to her husband super carefully. The MC holds the little guy firmly but gently, locked in on helping. Right then, a soft light starts glowing from his hands, completely wrapping the small injured animal in the energy of his healing magic. The bruises fade from the rabbit's body fast, leaving little Dorothy spellbound, seeing the pain disappear like magic. Watching that insane flex up close, the little girl jumps for joy and screams praises for her dad's magic. Juin just watches his daughter's hype, heart bursting with pride. The guy clears his throat to get the family's attention and adjusts the pet in his arms, wanting to drop some lore about the animal, but his wife and daughter are already way too obsessed with the new roommate. When the MC leans down to set the little guy on the floor, Dorothy quickly stops him. The little girl runs up with a makeshift wooden basket and calls her dad to show off the new bed she made with so much love. The young guy is surprised and totally blown away by how cute the move was. Juin gently sets the bunny down inside the wooden basket, while his daughter watches, dying of cuteness. Tucked into its new bed, the little animal quickly shuts its eyes and falls into a super peaceful sleep, melting the little girl's heart, who cheers quietly so she doesn't wake it up. Mission accomplished, the dad pets the kid's head with a massive smile and tells her she has to protect the family's new pet. Not totally getting his language, Dorothy just mumbles curiously. Lizzie quickly jumps in with a super warm vibe, explaining that her husband wants their daughter to take charge of taking care of the bunny from now on. The little girl's eyes go wide, feeling like an absolute boss. With pure determination and a huge smile, little Dorothy holds the wooden basket tight. She promises, super proud, that she'll take care of the little guy and keep him safe. The kid places a hand on the pet's bed and swears eternal protection. Sitting on the floor, the dad watches the adorable scene right next to his wife. The couple shares a look packed with love and teamwork, smiling and cracking up at their daughter's totally pure and serious commitment. Later that day, the old cabin sits wrapped in the peace of the forest under the soft evening light. Already tucked into her makeshift bed, little Dorothy hugs the bunny super sweetly under the covers and drifts off to sleep, while Juin quietly studies the wooden plaques. Sitting on the dark floor, the couple shares a study session. The husband recalls that his first goal in this terrifying world was just to escape the cart where he was being treated like livestock. But his ambition leveled up way too fast, and he admits that humans are seriously greedy creatures, realizing he should be way more grateful for everything he's already built. Looking at his focused wife beside him, he confesses that after scoring a house and a family, his next goal is to expand their home so Dorothy has more room to play. Plus, his main focus right now is learning to read and write to make their lives easier. With a chill smile on his face, the MC figures that his biggest drive to learn and grow isn't ambition, but the deep gratitude he feels for the partner he chose to share his life with. The young woman tries to sound out a few words using the wooden plaques, fighting off the visible burnout of someone who worked hard all day and just wants to crash. Spotting his wife's exhaustion, Juin subtly leans against her, wanting to reward her grind with a little affection. Juin quickly starts giving his partner's tense shoulders a gentle massage. Getting this random pampering, the young woman whispers a thank you, her voice thick with shyness and fatigue. Leaning on her in a sort of indirect, comforting hug, the guy thinks about how much that simple touch warms his heart. His giant hands softly squeeze his wife's white clothes, focused entirely on melting away all the day's stress from those small, delicate shoulders. Holding his wife's hands super gently, Juin rubs them to chill her out. Giving in to the moment of pure peace, the young woman rests her head on her husband's shoulder, soaking up the warmth of that protective embrace. Wrapped in the dim light of the oil lamp, the couple shares a totally peaceful and intimate moment in the dead of night. Far from there, darkness takes over the front of a massive stone building in a distant city. By the next morning, a cart rushes down a dirt road, with old Gus doing the math and figuring it'll take more than one day to reach their destination. Bouncing around inside, the village chief complains that his whole body is already sore and spending cash on this trip is a massive pain. But a greedy smirk creeps onto his face, totally confident that all this hassle is gonna pay off big time. The guy remembers Juin's towering build, puzzled by why that mountain guardian is so ridiculously strong, considering the rare healing mages are usually tiny and weak. Super hyped about the scoop, he's absolutely sure he'll rake in a bunch of gold coins by selling this priceless info. Right then, his attention snaps to the other passengers chatting about rumors that the neighboring empire summoned a powerhouse hero. One of the travelers questions if the story is legit, suspecting this supposed enemy hero might just be fake news. Another guy agrees with the doubt, claiming it's impossible to believe an ancient legend and that any lie would get busted fast. Eavesdropping on that chat, Gus gets a reality check and realizes his village is dangerously close to the enemy nation's border. Terrified of a surprise invasion dropping at any minute, the old guy decides he needs to sell the mage's info, grab the cash, and ditch that place for good. Totally clueless about the danger, little Dorothy wakes up super hyped in the cabin, calling her new pet bunny to come play. Watching the little girl, Lizzie jokes that this little guy is definitely not food. The wife teases, asking if her adopted daughter is losing her mind, since even she knows you don't gobble up baby animals. Catching the kid's look, the young woman tells her to stop drooling if she actually gets the lesson. Like she just remembered something urgent, the blonde little girl lets out a yell, remembering it's feeding time for the pet. Packed with energy, Dorothy bolts toward the yard, shouting that she's gonna go feed the animals. Already outside, the kid walks through the grass looking confused when she spots her adoptive dad building a new wooden fence. Suddenly, it clicks for her and she understands why he's building it. Hyped, the kid walks up to the rustic little pen, remembering her main mission out there. Staring down the two weird, massive beasts Juan brought back from the hunt, Dorothy grumbles that those things are way too big and ugly. Even though she's not a fan of their vibe, she dumps a pile of fresh weeds on the ground, telling them to eat up. The little girl crosses her arms and tells the animals she's super busy today, ordering them to behave while she's gone. Not wasting any time, she scoops up even more leaves from the dirt to make sure those creatures have a full feast. With a huge smile on her face, the little girl convinces herself she can use magic too, and can't wait to flex her skills for her adoptive dad. With her wild imagination, Dorothy thinks she'll be able to blast her awesome power straight into those beasts' meat, giggling just thinking about the absolute feast. Overflowing with pure joy, the kid tosses more weeds to the animals, hyped about her new chore around the house. Sitting on the cabin floor holding the wolf pelt, Lizzie stresses over the merchant cart arriving, knowing they desperately need supplies. Stroking the dark fur, she knows it would sell for top dollar but refuses to part with her husband's first kill, stuck in a huge dilemma. The young woman looks over at Juan, realizing the guy urgently needs new clothes and boots, on top of having to stock up the pantry. Shifting her eyes to a basic rabbit pelt, the wife sighs, admitting that won't be nearly enough to cover the bills. With a serious and focused look, she makes a tough call to ensure her family is taken care of. Gripping her own hair tight, Lizzie gears up for what has to be done. Without a second thought, the young woman takes the scissors and chops off her long locks. A little while later, the MC's voice echoes from outside, announcing he's finally back from work. Little Dorothy bolts at top speed and throws herself into her adoptive dad's arms, having missed him a ton. Walking through the door, the guy gets a super warm welcome from his wife. But his eyes go wide in shock when he sees Lizzie's new look, while the little girl tugs at his pants talking about the change. Showing off her hair now cut to her shoulders, the young woman smiles sweetly, listening to her daughter yell that the long hair is gone. Feeling a squeeze in his chest, the family's hero calls his partner's name, looking seriously worried. Answering little Dorothy's curiosity, the mom naturally admits she cut her hair. The little girl crosses her arms, pouting and complaining that her adoptive mom's long hair was way too pretty to be chopped off. Instantly figuring out why she did it, Juan feels terrible, completely guilty that she had to sacrifice her own hair for cash. Feeling a mix of sadness and love, the young guy walks slowly toward his partner. Touching her short hair super gently, he apologizes from the bottom of his heart, catching the young woman completely by surprise. Looking at her husband's caring face, the wife thinks about how this man is completely different from anything she's ever known. In her mind, Lizzie remembers that the women in that poor region grow their hair out specifically just to sell it to survive. Being held with so much care, she admits his concern is so sweet that the urge to cry is completely taking over her body. Overcome by emotion, the young woman throws herself into a super tight hug, crying purely out of happiness for being loved so much. Watching the scene, little Dorothy flashes a radiant smile, feeling her heart warmed by her beautiful family. Sometime later, the family heads down the mountain toward the trade village, with the wife refusing a piggyback ride so she doesn't weigh the guy down even more. Carrying the little girl on his shoulders, the MC flexes a huge smile of pure satisfaction. The trio makes their way down the tree-lined trail in an incredibly chill and fun vibe. Hitting their destination, they run into a bustling market packed with stalls and locals enjoying the day. Little Dorothy runs wild through the streets, amazed by the mouthwatering smell of food hanging in the air. Checking out the crowd, Juan mentally wonders how long it's been since he walked through a place this packed with people. Watching the pedestrians pass by, the memory of that fateful Christmas day in his original world bubbles back up. Keeping pace with his wife and daughter, the guy walks in silence, processing the insane contrast with his current life. The cold image of the big city flashes in his mind, remembering that lonely Christmas Eve perfectly. Back then he felt invisible, just another bitter guy walking totally alone through the festive crowd. Snapping back to the sunny present, the young guy focuses on the sweet partner by his side and the little girl skipping with joy right in front of him. With a light heart, he realizes that just hanging out with his own family is the best feeling in the world, as the little one speeds up, completely fascinated. Drawn by all the cool new stuff, Dorothy runs toward the merchant tents scattered around the village. The little girl stops in front of some iron pots, begging her mom to let her check out the merch up close. Right next door, a merchant's shouting grabs the crowd's attention, swearing he pays top dollar for premium goods. The little blonde girl watches the hustle, totally blown away by this brand new world. Suddenly, a really well-dressed little boy spots Dorothy and stops dead in his tracks. Checking the girl out from a distance, the young noble thinks she looks incredibly familiar, while the little girl gets weirded out by his intense, confused stare. Juin tells his wife to keep a close eye on the little one, while the noble kid stays intrigued, thinking Dorothy looks exactly like someone he knows. Nearby, the family's negotiation kicks off, with the merchant carefully inspecting the lock of hair Lizzie decided to sell. The merchant lets out a tired sigh, building up the tension while the couple waits for his verdict on the sale. Unfortunately, the guy announces the market is flooded with that type of product, tanking the price massively and leaving the young woman totally bummed out by the offer. Inspecting the goods, the merchant realizes the fur is top tier and super thick, but decides to keep that to himself so he can rip them off. With zero shame, he lies to their faces, saying he can only trade it for cheap items, while internally celebrating seeing the young woman hesitate and almost fall for his scam. Already feeling like he bagged the win, the guy says he'll throw together some basic goods to close the deal. But Juin pops up out of nowhere and puts his hands on his wife's shoulders, leaving the merchant paralyzed with fear seeing how massive the guy is. The MC just glares at the scammer in dead silence with a seriously intimidating look. Giving him zero room to argue, the guy snatches the rabbit pelt back with a firm grip. The merchant tries to hold onto the item, but ends up letting go when he feels the young guy's ridiculous strength. With the item back in hand, Juin tells Lizzie they're heading to another town, warning her that you can see the lie written all over that dude's face. Watching his sale go up in smoke, the merchant starts panicking, but the young woman mentions the other village is way too far. Shut down before he can even try to haggle, the guy is left shook by the giant's move, while the wife is stunned realizing she was getting played. Trying to cover his tracks, the seller asks who's lying and swears he was just quoting the standard market rate, making the young woman realize how her lack of knowledge almost cost them big time. Backed into a corner, the scammer folds completely, claiming he'll take the loss and offering salt, a pot, and even men's clothes in the bundle. The wife is super confused by the guy's sudden 180. But the family's hero doesn't back down and insists they need to find a spot that pays a fair price for their hard work. Worried about the trek, he notes the shop is far and offers to carry her, leaving his partner totally blushing as she refuses and swears she can walk just fine. Watching them walk away, the seller yells out desperately asking them to wait, admitting that pelt was the highest quality item of the day. Ignoring the scammer's whining, the couple casually keeps walking through the market. Totally defeated, the merchant silently curses himself, realizing he just fumbled a golden. The little family leaves the trading hub behind, weaving their way through the stalls and local villagers. Catching the curious looks from other kids, Dorothy points at the young guy with total pride and yells that he's her dad, while her mom tells her to hurry up. The little girl skips happily ahead of them, broadcasting the news about her adoptive dad to the whole world. The day stays chill and bright, with sunlight peeking through the tree leaves all around. Snuggled into the rocking motion of the walk, little Dorothy soaks up the cozy smell around her, feeling completely safe knowing her super strong dad is holding her. Sleepy, the girl wonders why it suddenly got so warm, remembering she was freezing just a second ago. It quickly clicks for her when she realizes the MC tucked her inside his own jacket to keep her warm for the trip. Suddenly, the little one pops her head out of the fabric, remembering something super important. All worked up, she asks her dad to put her down immediately, announcing she really needs to go feed her new pet bunny. Doing as she asked, Juin leans down and drops the little girl onto the dirt road with a lot of care. Dorothy bolts full speed toward the old cabin, screaming her arrival at the top of her lungs. Not wasting a second, the little one runs straight into the brush to grab the fresh meal she prepped earlier. Overflowing with joy, the kid runs back holding a handful of green leaves to feed the little guy. But the little girl's eyes go wide in a mix of pure shock and absolute disbelief. Staring at the makeshift wooden bed, she realizes her precious bunny vanished without a trace. Dropping the weeds, the little girl completely breaks down, crying her heart out. Lizzie rushes over in a panic to see what's wrong, while her daughter hiccups trying to explain that the pet went MIA. The wife panics seeing how crushed the kid is, quietly begging for the little animal to come back. Right then, the MC walks into the yard wanting to know what all the chaos is about. Looking at the empty basket, the young guy gets the bad news from his partner about the cute little pet making a run for it. But the guy quickly notices Lizzie is also crying, and she laments that her husband worked so hard on the mountain to catch that prey. Juan freezes, totally speechless, thinking it's insane that both of them are crying their eyes out just over losing a rabbit. Unable to hold it in, he bursts out laughing super loud right in the middle of the yard. Furious at his reaction, little Dorothy smacks his leg screaming that she hates him, while he tries to calm her down saying he can always just hunt another little guy in the forest. Cracking up at the adorable situation, the family hero's heart is full of joy, amazed by how lucky he is to share tears and laughs over such simple stuff. Far away from that cozy vibe, old Gus lurks silently in the shadows of a rocky area on the mountain. With a dark and determined look, the master hunter mutters to himself that the moment he's been waiting for is finally here. The terrifying view of the hidden camp in the mountains reveals the base of those twisted creatures. A massive, menacing goblin roars loudly in the dark, flexing its red eyes and sharp fangs. Hiding behind a rock, the master hunter admits he wants to charge in and take them all out right there, but knows it would be totally pointless suicide. Watching from a distance, he notices the place is overcrowded and calculates that once the food and prisoners run out, the monsters will start turning on each other. With tons of experience, the old-timer warns himself that if a single monster snaps and decides to raid the human village, the entire horde will follow right behind it instantly. Sizing up the enemies, Gus admits that in a 1v1 they are unbelievably weak, but the real nightmare with these beasts is that they always attack in massive swarms. The painful memories of the women dragged by force to that awful place highlight the brutal reality of pain and suffering they face until the end of their lives. Leaving the spot behind, the hunter thinks about how the beast's instincts will get way worse with spring rolling in, meaning they need to be stopped ASAP. Leaning on his staff, he walks back down the trail, totally convinced he's gonna need that giant strength to pull off his plan. The image of Juan's grateful smile weighs on the old man's conscience, feeling guilty that he has to use the innocent guy. Swallowing his regret, Gus keeps walking, accepting he has no choice but to send the rookie in to get rid of the monsters. Switching up the vibe, the morning starts off chill at the wooden cabin, with the young wife stretching and yawning near the door. Right then, she hears her husband's heavy footsteps in the yard and turns her attention outside. The young woman walks calmly across the grass to greet the guy, who just got back from his morning hunt. As soon as she gets close, Lizzie gets a jump scare seeing the dead prey in his hands, while Juan says hi, asking if she just woke up. Curious, the wife asks if he managed to catch another little pet, making the guy feel a bit awkward while holding his work axe. The MC's mind flashes back to earlier, remembering his totally failed attempt to catch the beast alive with his bare hands. Putting in massive effort, he did a desperate dive into the grass, but the agile creature just hopped away like it was nothing. Dodging the grab, the bunny landed perfectly safe without a single scratch. Flat on the dirt and pretty annoyed, the young guy accepted that the plan to bring home a live pet had totally flopped. Overtaken by pure competitive spirit, he locked in, promising not to give up and swearing he'd catch that beast no matter what. The hunt turned into a crazy chase through the forest, with the hero sprinting like a maniac after the tiny prey. Back to reality in the yard, he hides his embarrassment by laughing out loud and lying that catching the animal was a breeze, earning hyped claps from his amazed wife. The young woman steps up and touches his arm super sweetly, asking how they should prep that delicious meat for their meal. In a quick fun back and forth, the couple debates whether to salt or roast the prey, until the partner decides the best move is tossing the thing on the fire. Giving her head a nice pet, Juan plays along and happily decides the recipe will be a beautiful salt-crusted roast. Holding the cleaned pelt in her arms, Lizzie flashes a huge smile, promising the food is gonna be incredible and telling him to get ready for a feast. Hours later, the young guy spins the meat on a makeshift spit, imagining the wood smoke is gonna make the spices and veggies taste insanely. Messing with the logs underneath, he notices the flame is dying down and needs more fuel to keep the cook going. Standing near the fire, the guy stares at the flames looking super focused, raising his index finger as he gets a pretty bold idea. Looking at the tiny flame on his finger, Juan admits he thinks that power is kind of useless, but deep down figures it might actually be good for something. The guy keeps spinning the spit over the fire, focused on getting the meat perfectly golden before Lizzie and little Dorothy get too hungry. Right then, he points his index finger straight at the meal, sparking up some glowing little bursts of fire. A sudden explosion of flames completely swallows the food, leaving the young guy totally panicking at the intense heat. Waving his hands like crazy, he begs the fire to stop immediately, since that meal is for his family and absolutely cannot burn. With the flames vanishing fast, the family's hero is left confused as to why the magic decided to work right now, after so many failed attempts. Jogging his memory, he remembers the fight with the giant wolf. Noticing the fire didn't shoot from his body, it spawned directly on the monster. Touching his chin, the MC realizes the magic activates straight on the target, not in his hands, which explains why he never gets burned, and he decides to test the theory right away. Crouched near the spit, he focuses super hard, picturing the flames wrapping around the meat gently to cook it. With his eyes narrowed, the young guy channels all his focus just into getting the meal perfectly golden. The meat starts glowing with a super intense orange light, blowing the guy's mind when he sees his idea actually worked. The magical heat roasts the meal perfectly and evenly, proving he finally unlocked the secret to his powers. Totally amazed by his own flex, Juin sits on the rock stunned that he pulled off such an insane magical roast. Inside the cabin, the food gets served on a wooden plate smelling absolutely incredible, making his wife ask in awe what it is, while he plays it cool just calling it a roast. Sitting at the table, Lizzie thinks the dish's name is weird, while little Dorothy slams the table cheering that she finally gets to eat meat. Using his own strength, the guy pulls the roast's legs apart to serve up the best pieces. He holds the meat out toward his wife and adopted daughter, offering it with a big smile so they can try it. The two take massive bites at the exact same time, totally blown away by how good it tastes. Lizzie lets out a hum of pure satisfaction while Dorothy's eyes light up, praising the meal's awesome flavor. Watching the scene with his chin resting on his hand, Juin realizes he finally gets the saying that just seeing your family eat well is enough to fill your stomach and bring you joy. Enjoying a chill dinner with his girls, he reflects that once he got the hang of it, using fire magic became ridiculously easy. The next day, the young guy trains outside the cabin, managing to shoot flames at a target from a good distance without breaking a sweat. Staring at the rock completely scorched by the heat, he gets a reality check that if he uses this skill on people or animals, he'll be holding a terrifyingly OP ability. Looking at his own palms, the MC celebrates mastering both healing and destruction, absolutely certain that now he can protect Lizzie and Dorothy from any danger. The image of that creepy Santa pops into his head, making the young guy suspect the old man gave him these skills on purpose to guarantee his new family's safety and happiness. Looking up at the blue mountain sky, he figures he should probably set up an altar and offer some food as a thank you when Christmas rolls around. Suddenly, the guy's attention gets pulled by some movement in the cabin, realizing the family pet is already awake. Inside, little Dorothy walks around super hyped holding the wooden basket, announcing she's gonna give the bunny a grand tour of the house. The little girl points straight at the stone stove, explaining to the pet that this is the kitchen where the yummy food gets made. The small horned animal just watches everything super curious, while the kid emphasizes that this room is the most important one of all. Continuing the tour, the little girl points at the wooden structure, introducing the wall of the house to her new buddy. Right after, the little one walks up to her mom, who's organizing things, announcing to the pet that she's going to introduce someone super important. Lizzie watches the rabbit closely, while Dorothy warns with total seriousness that the little guy must never forget her mom's face. Just then, the door opens and the family's hero walks in, getting a super happy shout from the kid. The adoptive dad pets the girl's hair affectionately, playing along when she tells the animal to say hi to him. Flashing a huge smile, the guy gets an adorable jump scare when the little girl decides the rabbit's name is gonna be Dorothy. The couple exchanges totally confused looks about the name choice, asking what their daughter means by that. Lizzie looks down for a sec, processing the innocent joke and the meaning behind that confusing sentence. Suddenly, the young wife goes into shock imagining something else entirely, stuttering the kid's name in pure disbelief. Juin starts sweating bullets realizing the mix-up, getting that his partner thinks the blonde little girl is pregnant because of the pet's size. Panicking over his wife's crazy conclusion, the guy drops to his knees on the cabin floor trying to explain himself. Picturing a little baby angel flying near the ceiling, Lizzie grabs her husband's clothes freaking out, fully believing there's a kid growing in there. The young woman's eyes go wide, stunned by the unreal situation, thinking the news is the craziest thing in the world. Waving his hands desperately, the husband denies the whole thing, swearing there's no baby at all and telling her to forget that word, leaving his partner super confused. Wiping the sweat off his face, he sighs relieved he cleared up the mess, thinking it's way too early for them to have kids and they need to be more stable first. Curious about her dad's stance, Dorothy tilts her head holding the bunny and asks why he's kneeling on the floor. With a look packed with love, Juin smiles and decides the most important thing right now is focusing on building a bond with the little one, giving her all the love she never had. The little girl flashes a glowing smile, joking that her dad looks exactly like the family pet right now. Looking away worried, the young guy notices the animal's horn grew pretty fast, remembering he ignored the detail at first since he'd already seen magic in giant wolves. Staring at the bizarre little creature, the family's hero secretly questions if it's really safe to keep something so unusual around the girls. Later, Juin looks at the bamboo fence he built in the yard, thinking about the massive dilemma of ditching the baby animal in the woods or leaving it locked outside. Images of Lizzie and Dorothy protesting desperately in the cabin pop into his head, admitting the two got so attached to the beast in just a few days that he had to cave. Leaning on the fence, the guy figures that other than the weird horn, the animal acts exactly like a tame rabbit, and wishes old Gus was around to clear up his doubts. Thinking about the master trekking through the dangerous mountain, the rookie worries about him vanishing for 5 days, knowing his age and busted leg won't let him push too hard. Looking at his own hand, Juin plans to drop the secret about his healing magic once he fully trusts the hunter, with the goal of fixing his leg. Touching the rustic bamboo, the young guy feels deeply grateful for all the lessons and help he got, promising himself he's gonna return the favor one day. The MC smiles warmly, thinking that in a world where they are completely alone, the veteran hunter would perfectly fill the role of a grandpa for the little girl. Watching his wife and daughter chilling together, he realizes the old man would also be a great father figure to fill the void for Lizzie. Sitting on the dirt in the yard, he concludes that mages are insanely rare here, making flashy magic a huge risk for his family's safety. With a super serious and focused look, the hero decides to practice controlling his fire internally so he can use it daily without drawing any nosy looks. Seeking total focus, Juin pictures his own energy core glowing deep red, exactly like melted lava from a volcano. The young guy flexes his right hand, trying to channel all that mystic power through his body. With sweat dripping down his face from the effort, the guy whispers to himself, wondering if the technique finally worked. Staring at the wooden logs stuck in the ground he used as targets, he gets frustrated by the lack of visual effects and wonders if the heat was too weak or if he shaped the energy wrong. Letting out a tired sigh, the MC drops his hand, figuring he still needs a lot more skill to master internal magic. Suddenly, the logs start glowing orange and catch fire from the inside out, pulling a shout of pure victory from the rookie. Realizing he might accidentally burn the yard down, the young guy runs in a panic, grabbing a full bucket and yelling for water. Moving fast, the family's hero dumps all the liquid over the burning logs to put out the flames instantly. Smoke rises from the cooled wood, making the guy realize the spell was a massive success, burning the target internally without showing any fire on the outside. Juin's face lights up with a proud smile for mastering the technique so fast, until he gets interrupted by his daughter's happy voice calling him. Little Dorothy runs freely across the grass, calling her dad to come inside because the meat feast is finally ready. Packed with energy and zero fear, the little girl takes a huge leap toward her adoptive dad. The guy catches the kid midair holding her tight, giving her a sweet scolding about the danger of jumping that high, while she totally ignores him, focused purely on the food. Walking toward the cabin carrying the little one, Juin accepts the dinner invite, and the girl cheers for the awesome meal waiting for them. But suddenly, the MC's solid footsteps stop in the middle of the grass, turning his silent attention toward the edge of the forest. Holding the little girl in his arms, Juin keeps his eyes locked on the sky above the trees. He notices a massive flock of birds circling, thinking that movement looks super sketchy. The guy thinks to himself he hasn't seen birds acting like that since he got to the mountain, but quickly turns his head, shifting his focus. All worked up, little Dorothy yells that the meat is getting cold, making her adoptive dad apologize for spacing out. With that, the two walk happily back through the yard to finally dig into the feast. Later that same day, old Gus shows up near the fence calling the rookie outside. Walking across the grass, the MC tries to figure out the reason for the random visit, since the master usually only shows up at dawn. The veteran hunter checks out the new fence being built, and the young guy explains the mountain is dangerous because of wolves and sketchy people. Then Juin asks what brings the old man by at this hour, getting told that today's lesson is on how to craft a bow. Gus turns his back and says they'll just make a toy first before trying to craft a real weapon. Wasting no time, the old hunter orders the student to follow him fast, since they don't have a lot of time left. The guy follows the order instantly and tags along to the workspace behind the cap. Stopping in front of a wooden stump, the master tells the MC to pay super close attention to every detail. Right after, he drops a thick log on the chopping block while holding an axe. To kick things off, Gus holds up a small wooden wedge, saying they need to prep that first. Using a rustic hammer, the old man starts hitting the wedge, driving the piece into the top of the log. He repeats the move with crazy precision, showing off the technique step by step. The hunter explains you shouldn't sink the wood too deep, advising him to make the cut little by little. Watching closely, the guy gets that the trick isn't splitting it all at once, but using multiple wedges to break the log apart gradually. Time passes and the afternoon rolls on peacefully under the rustic roof of the old cabin. Handing over the finished piece, Gus tells the student to keep that lesson locked in his head, but Juwon immediately suspects something is off. The rookie analyzes the hunter's posture, finding it weird how he's rushing to teach everything at once, totally ignoring his promise to take things slow. Worried about the rush, the doubt creeps in and he asks straight up if something bad is going down or if the mountains suddenly got more dangerous. Pointing at the sky, the old man explains that the flock of birds flying way out there means some human probably got attacked by wolves. Then he hands the rustic bow to the MC, telling him to just use it for practice. Already turning his back, the old man says bye, saying the rest of the training will have to wait for later, and the young guy just thanks him for the lesson. The master hunter goes on his way down the forest trail, leaving the guy behind. As he walks, a dark and calculating look takes over the cloaked man's face. In his mind, he recalls going down to the village a few days ago to warn the local leader about finding the goblin den. With that urgent info, the village chief sent his own son to travel to a neighboring city for backup. The chief's son's trip was headed to a guild located in the city where the carriages usually stop. Even though it's a small branch, the hunter knows the officials move fast to recruit qualified adventurers for the job. Gus calculates the backup will arrive in a few days but refuses to drop his guard, knowing those beasts move incredibly fast. Looking at the crows perched in the trees, he concludes the birds the rookie saw were just circling some remains. From his past scouting, the master already noticed a group of survivors hiding near that zone. He figures that having a woman living wild in the woods was the perfect bait to draw the attention of those cruel creatures. Knowing how terrifying those monsters are, he predicts the threat is gonna blow up soon and chaos will hit the human village. Focused on his own plan, the old man tells himself that making huge sacrifices is absolutely necessary to hit a bigger goal. The image of Juwon running desperately through the forest pops into his head, betting everything on the young guy's surviving. Standing with his back turned, the hunter thinks that even if the rookie's wife ends up losing her life in the incoming attack, things will sort themselves out. He accepts that the loss will shatter the young guy's heart at first, but believes that as long as the hero is alive, he can always just find another family. Back in his hideout, Gus stares at his old rusted weapons, feeling like fate finally smiled on him at the end of his life. For a guy who spent his entire life living as a hunter, getting the chance to face his final hunt is the ultimate prize. The old man grabs his old, heavy sword, pulling the blade from the rack with a super firm grip. Wielding the giant weapon in the middle of the cabin, he overflows with satisfaction, swearing there is no greater joy than this. During the freezing night, the young wife opens the cabin door and steps out shivering, trying to stay warm. She spots her husband working near the bamboo fence lit by the moonlight. Walking slowly through the dark grass, Lizzie calls the guy's name to get his attention. Seeing his partner, Juwon looks worried and immediately asks why she came out in this freezing cold. Super sweetly, the young woman offers a bowl of hot stew telling him to eat, leaving the guy really touched by the move. He thanks her for caring and asks her to go back inside, but the wife insists on keeping him company until he finishes eating. The MC just admires her in silence, feeling his heart melt at so much dedication. Sitting near the fire in the yard, the family's hero praises the food, saying everything tastes amazing. Super happy with the compliment, Lizzie swears it was no trouble at all and is glad he liked it. The young guy keeps a loving look on her, soaking in that peaceful moment. Unable to resist, Juwon hugs his wife from behind in a super protective way while she holds the bowl. Leaning his face against hers, he admits he's insanely grateful for everything, but the young woman leans her head on him, thanking him right back. The two stay glued together there in the dark, kept warm by the flames and their mutual love. The next morning, the couple washes clothes together by the stream. The guy suggests doing it alone, but she claims they'll finish way faster as a team. Wringing out a huge piece of wet fabric, Juwon puts his back into it and jokes to himself that manual labor really makes him miss washing machines. Checking the full bucket, the guy thinks about the annoying process of soaking the clothes in bleach overnight just to rinse and dry them at dawn. He watches his partner beating the clothes in the water with a ton of energy, feeling bad she had to handle all this heavy lifting alone until now. Right then, little Dorothy comes running free along the stream bank, calling for her parents super loud. The little girl holds the bunny up toward her dad, asking him to use his healing magic again, and the young guy realizes he totally forgot about that detail. His attention jumps to a toy horn stashed in the basket, and the little one proudly explains her mom made it yesterday. Giving his adopted daughter a sweet head pat, Juwon agrees the toy is adorable, getting the kid super hyped. Right after, he slowly reaches out to examine the little animal up close. The second his fingers touch the small white horn, a soft light starts coming from the creature, catching the guy by surprise. The glow wraps around the pet's head, leaving the family's hero absolutely amazed by that unexpected match. But the light vanishes in the blink of an eye, and the young guy mutters that the master hunter didn't say a single thing about this. In his head, he rewinds to the chat he had with the old man during archery practice yesterday. Trying to translate the old man's words, he remembers the explanation that horned rabbits are pretty unusual creatures. Holding the pet in the air, the MC remembers the beast belongs to a species of magical beast that lives in the forests. The master promised that even though wild beasts are dangerous, raising them from babies is super chill and actually common among the locals. Crouched near Dorothy, the adoptive dad stares at the little animal deep in thought, weirded out that the glowing horn was never brought up in lessons, and wondering if they grabbed a different breed. Holding the small animal, Juan pets the horn and asks why it's glowing, hoping the creature isn't dangerous. The bunny lets out a super weird high-pitched sound, while the guy decides he could never let anything put Lizzie and Dorothy at risk. Then he lifts the pet to eye level asking if it understands anything at all, but quickly realizes the magic beast has no clue what he's talking about. Putting the animals back in the basket, the hero decides he'll ask old Gus about this next time, while little Dorothy excitedly asks him to pick names for the bunnies. The little girl points at the basket, demanding the names be really pretty just like hers. With his hand on his chin, the adoptive dad thinks for a sec and figures it's only fair to use names that match, since his daughter is named Dorothy. Looking at the real bunny, he decides to name it Oz. And for the plush bunny, he goes with the name Toto. Holding the wooden basket, the little girl is amazed by the pics and happily repeats all three names. The kid jumps around the grass celebrating the new pet family, leaving the guy super satisfied with her reaction. Radiating pure happiness, Dorothy lets out a super sweet and contagious laugh. Far from the mountain, the vibe in the village is pure tension, with locals gossiping about the rumor that goblins are planning to raid the place. They talk about how that's exactly why the chief's son traveled to get backup, bringing up old stories of how those monsters wipe out everyone and only spare the women. Taken over by panic, one of the guys suggests they ditch the village immediately, admitting he can't even sleep right anymore. Nearby, a worker complains about having to clean a public cart nobody uses, while his coworker tells him to quit whining. The guy insists the cleaning should be everyone's job, warning that cart will be their only lifeline if the beasts invade the place. Out of patience, his coworker calls him an idiot and explains that if the village chief uses his own cart to bail, everyone will notice and call him out for being a coward. The leader's wife sneaks up, telling the guy to stop complaining and ordering him to stash food in the vehicle when nobody's looking. Turning her back, the lady grumbles that nothing goes right and complains the meeting with the informant didn't go as planned. The village chief shows up furious, complaining the buyer only cared about the mage's power level, since healing mages are ridiculously rare. Kicking the crates in pure rage, the leader rants that absolutely none of his plans are working. Deep in the forest, old Gus hides in the bushes as a deafening roar shatters the quiet of the woods. The hunter watches the goblins tearing into each other savagely, realizing the violent nature of those creatures always leads to fighting. Hearing the brutal impact of a hit between the monsters, the master figures a mutiny just broke out, proving their hunger and toxic instincts have hit their limit. He knows full well the losers of the mutiny will get exiled and march straight for the village hunting for women, but thinks this is happening way too early. The hunter figures if the beasts attack before backup arrives, his entire master plan will go down the drain, considering using an emergency item to reroute the monsters. Trying to decide which way the goblins should go, the image of the old wooden cabin pops into his head as the perfect target. The old man's eyes darken as he confirms that isolated spot will work perfectly to stall the beasts. In his memories, he remembers little Dorothy as a terrified kid who never smiled and was always hiding from people. Thinking about the little girl finally being happy, the old guy admits it's a shame she found joy right now, but confesses it's way too late to feel any kind of guilt. To ease his own conscience, Gus convinces himself that Lizzie and Dorothy are just outsiders with zero ties to the village, making them the perfect sacrifice. A painful memory crashes into his mind, remembering when he trained his own son to be a hunter since he was a little kid. Back then, the old man cried saying the boy was a flawless hunter but a failure of a human, regretting that life would only bring misery. But the kid just rejected his dad's comfort, claiming coldly that his life was perfect just the way it was. Snapping back to the harsh reality of the dark forest, the master hunter stands firm on his cruel decision. With a maniacal smile on his face, he admits there's a goal he needs to hit even if it costs him his own life, claiming that feeling this final rush is his true happiness. The old man is absolutely certain Juan will inherit all his skills, believing his lessons will turn the rookie into the ultimate hunter his son could never be. Watching the movement, the old guy notices the horde of exiled goblins has already started marching straight toward the human village. Moving fast, he reaches into his supply bag and pulls out the emergency item he kept hidden. With a quick throw, the master tosses the object into the trees to pull the monster's attention toward the path leading to the cap. Way far from that danger, a regular rabbit hops chill through the grass without noticing the threat nearby. Juin moves forward with super silent steps, using the stealth tech he just learned. Without making a sound, the guy gets into position and aims at the prey, completely locked into today's hunt. Wiping his knife after the job, he realizes his hesitation completely vanished, and the disgust he felt taking down animals doesn't even exist anymore. Hiking back down the trail, the MC sighs, realizing he adapted to this brutal world without even noticing the change in himself. Suddenly, the rookie hunter's footsteps stop dead in the middle of the walk, drawn by something different in the woods. He turns his head, checking out an unknown part of the forest, curious because he's never explored that side of the mountain before. Looking out at the distant landscape, the guy scopes the situation and realizes he still has a good chunk of time before he needs to head home. Deciding to explore, the young guy's feet pivot immediately, going completely off-route. Adjusting the bow on his back, Juin decides to use the detour to set up some new traps along the way, totally clueless that he's walking straight into the most dangerous zone of the mountain.